Hey guys, I'm Urizi. This story is all about what if Naruto was assigned to Asuma and Team 10. Mizuki never got to shoot his mouth off at Naruto the night he took the Scroll of Seals. Other than skipping a half-manic monologue from him, what exactly did this change for everyone's favorite blonde ninja? Who knows? Before we proceed with the story, please like and subscribe to this channel if you liked the video, and don't forget to check the description for the other works of the author if you liked the story. Let's start. Chapter 22, Best Foot Forward. It was still around a week and a half before the Chunin exam's final round, and for Team 10's first training day of the week they switched venues, mostly due to the fact that Asuma had to take a personal day on that day. Ino kept insisting, however, that he was just taking that day to do something for Kurenye's birthday. That prompted Naruto and Shikamaru to wonder why she knew when Kurenye's birthday was. However, due to that, instead of meeting at their training field, they met at Shikamaru's home in his clan compound for a change of scenery to keep things from getting stale. It was definitely a change. The Nara clan compound was set in the woods at the edge of Konoha and had houses built in spaces cleared with the tiniest amount of effort. You could look out of a window and see a row of trees 5 feet from the houses, sometimes depending on whose it was. The compound had the narrowest roads leading through it, and the wall that separated it from the rest of the village didn't even have their clan crest emblazoned on it anywhere like the other clans in the village did. Lazy, the whole lot of them. It did help with the deer that they raised all throughout the area, so that could have always been the reason for it. It was doubtful though. At the moment they were in the woods near Shikamaru's home running walkthroughs with their formations, using a trio of Naruto's clones as dummies to imitate the responses of their opponents in the instance of a team battle during the exam tournament. After a few hours of going through whatever possible looks that Shikamaru figured they'd see from potential opponents, the team filtered back to his house for a rest of sorts. Despite the rather mundane practice, Naruto was beaming at the moment. He had been that way all day and no one had figured to ask why until then, because he was usually pretty chipper most of the time. This was ridiculous though. Being the host of the team, once they took up spots sitting out in front of Shikamaru's house for a break, he took it upon himself to bring up the topic. So Naruto, why are you so happy today? It's not like I even came up with anything new today. We were just going over older stuff. Naruto turned his attention to his teammate, still grinning widely. Oh, it's not that, it's just that, well, remember that little problem with that seal of mine that I had? The time thing. Both Ino and Shikamaru nodded. I fixed it, he said, sounding quite pleased with himself. You fixed it? Shikamaru said, raising an eyebrow. You mean you can hold off an enemy for 3 minutes now to do it by yourself? Naruto blinked before rubbing the back of his neck sheepishly. No. But the 3 minutes isn't an issue. I just sped the whole thing up. To the others it sort of seemed like he was hesitant to talk about just what he had done. Ino looked at him in a confused manner. I thought you said Fuinjutsu was set in certain ways of performing things. How in the world did you speed it up? Didn't you say doing things the wrong way with Fuinjutsu could kill you or turn you inside out? I did, Naruto said, looking away from inquisitive eyes, but I didn't change the way that the seal works. I just did something else. Like change the source that's actually powering the seal. The seal was designed to be powered by using human chakra as a generator, but chakra was chakra and it would all work in this instance. It's a good thing Ero-sensei's been trying to train me to use it for the last week or so. He thought to himself rather bitterly, even if he wasn't necessarily thinking that way at the time at all. Flashback, 3 days earlier, 2 weeks until Chunin exam's final round. For the last few meetings Naruto had with Jiraiya, the man had been trying to stir some way for Naruto to draw upon the Kyuubi's chakra in an effort to teach him how to harness or at least tap into it before the finals. It was rougher going than either of them thought it would be. Jiraiya thought that with the way that most Jinchuriki in recorded history were, Naruto could already use the Kyuubi's chakra, he just couldn't control it well. Most Jinchuriki were constantly fighting a battle to keep their powers in check. Naruto seemed to be the opposite. He didn't know anything about what the Kyuubi's influence provided him with until he realized that he had been using its chakra against Haku in Nami no Kuni. The last resort for Jiraiya to think of a way to access the Kyuubi's chakra was based off of Naruto's description of how the battle with Haku went, and he forced Naruto to cut out all embellishments to make himself look good. He needed the truth out of the blonde if he was going to figure out what to do. According to Naruto, he had taken quite a beating from Haku while he had been isolated from the rest of his team inside of her dome of ice, so he was worn down. In addition to that, Haku put his teammates into a state of false death, making Naruto believe that she had killed them, and his emotions had been fuzzy for the entire battle with everything that had happened before it, so that pushed him into a rage. Strong negative emotions and being pushed to his physical limits brought out the beast, so to speak. Yeah, it was going to be easy to work with that. It didn't mean he was going to like what he was going to have to do though. And neither would Naruto in all actuality. For that day's session of physical work, Jiraiya had told Naruto that they were going to forego training him to hold him off in combat. Naruto would have to achieve an objective against him, and Jiraiya's method of motivating Naruto into deciding that a straight-up battle was a good idea was that if he could achieve the objective and defeat him, then there wouldn't be anyone that Naruto couldn't defeat. The other sticking point was that Naruto was officially allowed to go all out in the battle. Not only was he allowed to, he was expected to. Nothing less would do. The thing about Naruto going all out though, was that you didn't realize that you were out of your league until you actually took the chance and stepped up to play with the heavy hitters. He had been smacked around by Asuma, just like the rest of his team, but he had never really had his head kicked in by someone that was head, shoulders, hell, entire torso above him. Not until then anyway. So eventually Naruto did get rolling and he did start fighting as hard as he possibly could. It was too bad that his best just wasn't good enough. It wasn't even close. Naruto's body collided with the trunk of a tree, bouncing off and hitting the ground with a dead-weight thud. He lay motionless for a moment before slowly stirring and getting back up to his feet. His face was a bruised, blood-stained mess and his clothes were completely wrecked. He thought his nose had been broken earlier, but another punch he had taken might have put it back into place later since he could breathe out of it again, despite the fact it was pouring blood like a faucet that wasn't turned all the way off. "You heard what I said, Gaki?" Jiraiya said in a grim voice as he held up a bell attached to a string between his thumb and index finger. "You can't leave until you take this from me. So stop pussyfooting around and fight to win," he demanded. The immediate thing Naruto wanted to do was yell at him that he had been fighting to win the entire time. Jiraiya had taken his weapon nearly right from the start and had almost broken his hand in doing so. Since then, no matter how many clones Naruto made, Jiraiya eradicated them all with extreme prejudice. He had turned half of their usual training field into a swamp and had submerged and drowned the clones. He had shot off a massive fireball bigger than anything Sasuke had ever conjured and had charred most of the other half of the field, and he had summoned a trio of large toads to completely demolish him in conjunction once he had apparently gotten tired of beating 7 shades of shit out of Naruto with his fists and feet. "Well," Jiraiya said expectantly as he walked out in front of his summoned trio of toads, all of them looking at Naruto with the same deadly serious expression as their summoner. Suddenly Jiraiya's face twisted into one of anger. "Are you just going to stand there and let me beat you to death, or are you going to fight me? You're like a helpless infant right now. For Kami's sake, do you think any real ninja would hold back on you just because you look so pitiful right now? Never giving up won't do you any goddamned good if you've got the power of a rodent to back it up with. What the fuck do you want me to do about it, you old bastard?" Naruto shouted back at him, glaring although one of his eyes were nearly swollen shut. "I've done everything. I'm out of weapons. I can't get close to you unless you run up to me and hit me yourself. Tell me what you want from me," he shouted, losing his temper and running directly at Jiraiya in a desperate attempt to hit him somehow, to make him feel what he was feeling at the moment any way he could. Before he got close, a tongue wrapped itself around Naruto's waist and jerked him towards one of the larger toads, prepared to give him a powerful shot once it reeled him in. Naruto grit his teeth in anger and fear, knowing that he didn't want his claw cleaned by that toad again. As he was being pulled in, Naruto linked his hands by the bottom of his palms and tucked them back to prepare for a double palm thrust as he gathered wind chakra in them, Jiga Shinto dash. Before he was pulled close enough to try his jutsu that would damn sure make that toad pay for trying to beat on him some more, he was kicked in the side of the head and sent flying from the grip of the toad's tongue through the brush at the edge of the clearing, ending with him landing in the shallow water nearby that usually had women in it that Jiraiya peeked on. Naruto wasn't that lucky for there to be witnesses today. Jiraiya stared at Naruto after landing from his kick, watching the boy try to pick himself up face first out of the water. "That jutsu of yours that you made by accident?" he said questioningly, remembering what Naruto was about to use on his toad. That's more like it. Fight to end a life that's trying to take yours. No one's going to come to save you, so take it into your own hands. He then proceeded to swallow the bell. Remember what I said? Take this bell from me or you're not leaving. I'm a man of my word, and I don't feel like staying out here all night, so I'll just have to make sure you can never leave again. The killing intent radiating off of Jiraiya was palpable. You can't do that. Naruto said, trying to get up weakly once more. You can't just kill me here no matter what. Jiraiya just stared Naruto down. I could kill you here and be gone from the entire village within 5 minutes. You don't meet with your team for the first meeting of the week until tomorrow, so no one would find you until at least midday tomorrow. Do you know how difficult it would be for anyone to find me and actually make me pay for anything that I do? I won't let a loudmouth weakling be my student, so prove that you're not dead weight or I'll literally turn you into dead weight. I have a reputation to keep that you're not going to stain. Naruto grit his teeth as he tried to keep his legs from shaking. He could barely stand up despite his ability to heal quickly, and Jiraiya's killing intent was crushing. He had never felt it directed at him from someone so much stronger than himself before. Jiraiya made 2 hand seals and leaves began to kick up around them, obscuring Jiraiya from Naruto's view until he vanished altogether from his sight. Naruto was about to take what he saw to be an opening and attempted to use Shunshin to obscure his own movements so that he could leave the area as fast as possible, but Jiraiya's voice stopped him and put him back on the defensive. You still don't get it. Naruto turned around and found Jiraiya standing right there holding his own machete at the ready. Naruto attempted to move, but Jiraiya's arm came down before he could do so, leaving the blonde helpless to defend until a figure came between the both of them. Jiraiya's swing drew a large spray of blood from whoever had stepped in front of Naruto and the figure dropped backwards into the water. Looking down at the figure, Naruto's face twisted in horror as he saw Iruka laying at his feet, a deep wound across his throat where he intervened and took the damage for Naruto. His blood was draining out into the water, turning it red as it rolled along with the flow of the stream. The man's eyes seemed to be straining in pain for a moment before they finally went dull and dead. All Naruto could do was look up at Jiraiya, who was still holding the machete that was dripping with Iruka's blood. The man didn't seem to have any remorse whatsoever for his actions. You see what barking gets you when you don't know the first thing about what we ninja do? Now you've made Iruka die before his time, but you'll be following him in a moment. He said as he lifted the machete again. Naruto's eyes were locked onto the man as tears started coming out of his eyes, and those very same eyes turned red in the process as his canines and fingernails enlarged and his whisker marks deepened. Before Jiraiya's arm could lower, Naruto let out an ear-splitting shout of anger and agony and knocked him away with the pure force of the red chakra radiating off of him threateningly. As Jiraiya was sent flying away from Naruto, his body disappeared like a specter, as did the body of Iruka at Naruto's feet. Nearby in the trees, Jiraiya watched as the Kyuubi's chakra began radiating off of Naruto. Once it began to generate from his body, Jiraiya seemed to let out a sigh of relief. Magen, Narakumi no Jutsu, demonic illusion, hell viewing technique. Sorry kid, at least you managed to break it. Whatever Naruto saw in that genjutsu pushed his exhausted body over the edge, and now Jiraiya had to solve it in case Naruto was berserk. He dropped down from his hiding place and the splash of his feet in the stream turned Naruto to him. Jiraiya seemed unintimidated at the sight of the power exuding off of Naruto. He seemed more apologetic than anything, especially once he saw the tears on Naruto's face. Jiraiya simply extended his arms in a wide gesture as if he were inviting Naruto to take a free shot at him, not caring what he did for revenge. Naruto just stared him down, his teeth bared as he seemed to strain visibly against charging over and beating Jiraiya to a pulp. Well, you did it, kid. Remember what this feels like. This is the Kyuubi's chakra. Everything you're feeling right now, I want you to learn how to harness that. Jiraiya said with a weak smile on his face before letting the expression drop. Aren't you going to come over here and rip me apart for that genjutsu? For beating the hell out of you the way I did. The look on Naruto's face showed that he was struggling with the decision until he finally shook his head in the negative, wiping his eyes at the same time. The inhuman chakra flowing from him faded away, leaving Naruto's normal physical features prominent once more. I just want to go home, he said before turning around to walk away. He didn't know what to say. All he did know was that he just wanted that day to end. Naruto, wait. Jiraiya said, getting Naruto to stop before he was able to take a few steps away from him, getting him to stop and turn around with a tired look on his face. Jiraiya stuck his fingers down his throat and basically choked back up the bell he had swallowed minutes before. It floated down the stream towards Naruto, directing his attention towards it as he took the effort to bend down and pick it up. I'm a man of my word. Naruto nodded and put the bell in his pocket as a silence fell over the two of them, only the running water and the birds cawing in the sunset making any noise in the area. Jiraiya sighed, I know you probably hate me right now, but I did one of the only things I could think of to get you to trigger the Kyuubi's chakra and keep you relatively safe at the same time. If you don't want me to train you anymore, that's your choice. If you would like me to keep training you, I'd be more than happy to, but for what it's worth, you did great. There's nothing embarrassing about calling you my student at all. I'm not even sure the Yondaime could have taken what you did and kept from trying to kill me afterwards. Yeah, sure. Naruto said quietly before he stopped and looked at his hands without turning around to face Jiraiya. The only reason the Kyuubi even gave me the chakra was so that I'd have the power to make you pay for beating me up and for the genjutsu. If I had done that, if I had tried to beat you to death, then I would have given in to it. He dropped his hands and started walking again to look for the last place his machete had actually been. I'm never going to let the Kyuubi get any influence over me, I'm the one in control here. As he walked away, he could hear faint dark chuckling in the back of his mind in response to his thoughts. I'll help you for now, boy, because you dying wouldn't be beneficial to me. One day you will be weak, too weak to put up any sort of pitiful defense against me. In the end, you're still just a human, and just like any other human, if you have enough hate or darkness in your heart, you won't be able to keep yourself from holding me back. It was only a matter of time. End flashback. The break had ended for Team 10, but they didn't venture too far from Shikamaru's house as the practice was beginning to wind down anyway. Naruto was in a circle surrounded by 5 clones that all took turns going through slower than full-speed motions of sparring with the machete, just to get a feel of fighting multiple armed opponents at once. In case the team from Kumo made it out of the first round against Tenten's team, he would need to be ready for that possibility since they all had blades of their own. The bell he had been given by Jiraiya after the whole ordeal, given because there was no way he could have possibly taken it from the man from where he had it, was tied at the end of his machete's hilt to a chain and a strong cable as a reminder of just what it took to access the Kyuubi's power. Naruto had enough of working with his clones and jumped out of the circle, the clones dispelling in puffs of smoke as he did so. As this happened, Shikamaru looked up at the orange-colored sky. Alright, I think we should call it a day for now, he said, getting Ino and Naruto's attention. We still have daylight, Naruto said, almost whining at having to stop for the evening. Why are we stopping now? Shikamaru pointed up at the sky. Don't you know? It's like 8 p.m. right now. Sunset is the best time to take a nap before you go to sleep at night, he said matter-of-factly. Naruto opened his mouth to argue, but his stomach beat him to the punch with a rather loud grumble. Heh, well, I guess I am pretty hungry right now. He laughed rather sheepishly. Fine, I'm going home then. Actually, he was going to go see if Iruka wanted to eat. After what had gone down with Jiraiya's genjutsu, he wanted to hang out with his old teacher more in case something like that actually did happen in the future. He hadn't told anyone of what had occurred for multiple reasons, the Kyuubi being a subject of it being one, another reason being that he didn't believe Jiraiya had wanted to hurt him. Still though. There you go, Goldie-kun. Ino chirped brightly as she socked him lightly on the arm. No need to kill yourself to get in every extra scrap of training you can. 30 minutes of you puttering around isn't going to change anything. Now walk me out of here, I'm tired, she insisted. Walk you out of here? Naruto muttered out of earshot. You live less than a mile outside of the Nara compound, I live all the way on the other side of the village. What do I look like, a bodyguard? As a ninja he technically could be called upon to be a bodyguard, but that was not the point. The point was that at the moment he wasn't a bodyguard, let alone Ino's bodyguard. Ino waved to Shikamaru as she and Naruto began to walk through the forest path leading away from his home. Later, Shikamaru, tell your mom I said hi whenever she gets back, okay? Shikamaru just waved weakly at both of them before turning to head into the house. Yeah. I'll see both of you troublesome blondes later. After getting out of the forest that Shikamaru's clan populated, the rather well-to-do looking street that it turned into split into 2 paths. Ino stood frozen in place as Naruto began walking down one of the roads to go home. Goldie-kun, where exactly do you think you're going? You're supposed to be walking me home. Naruto turned around to look at Ino and managed to peer down the other unused street side that he had chosen to not take. The walls lining the side of that particular road eventually began to be covered in a certain design on them, something that Naruto commented on since he had seen that design repeatedly, mostly at Ino's clan flower shop. Ino-chan, your clan compound is right there. It's literally 100 yards away. Puffing her cheeks out, Ino disputed this as if she were informing Naruto on something obvious. That's not the point, it's just what you do. As a gentleman, you have to make sure that the lady gets home safely. Naruto gave her a look with a raised eyebrow and pointed down the street. It's right there. I could probably run to your house in the next 30 seconds if I knew where it was. Refusing to budge on the matter, Ino put her foot down as she crossed her arms over her chest. Well then, that's another reason for you to walk me home, so that you actually know where my house is, you know, for future reference. What future reference? Naruto asked/shouted while waving his arms indignantly, not particularly caring if any passers-by thought he was insane. It probably wasn't that far removed from what they thought of him in the first place. If I need to know where your house is and you're not there to tell me, I'll ask Shikamaru. He was really hungry at the moment. Being hungry made Naruto cranky. Unbelievable Goldie-kun. Ino thought to herself with a twitching eye, was that too subtle for him? I thought it was obvious what I was hinting at. She let out a sigh and shook her head before walking down her street towards her compound. Someone needs a little more seasoning, she said quietly in a sing-song manner. What was that? Naruto said as he almost didn't hear her speak. Nothing, she replied, waving over her shoulder at him, but I'm going to make you pay for that tomorrow during practice. Ino turned around and pointed at Naruto as if her finger was some sort of firearm while she took aim by grasping her forearm with her other hand. You can't run from me forever, you know that. She finished with a firing motion and a wink before turning to go about her own way once more. Run from what? Are you talking about your new jutsu? Naruto said questioningly before shrugging it off as Ino being Ino. Ugh, whatever. I'll see you tomorrow, Ino-chan, he said before making a ram seal and leaving the area concealed by a small puff of smoke, leaving behind a platinum blonde shaking her head in mild amusement. The next day, Team 10 training ground. Ino was grinning at Asuma and pretty much had been all morning during downtime. Okay Ino, what do you want? The man asked in an exacerbated voice. Nothing, Asuma-sensei, she replied. I just wanted to know how yesterday went with Kurenye-sensei. Hearing Kurenye's name unexpectedly due to not really listening to what was going on at the moment, Naruto, who was about to light up a cigarette, dropped it from his mouth onto the ground as he whipped his head around rapidly in an attempt to locate the pretty red-eyed lady to save himself another lecture about smoking. Shikamaru shook his head with a smirk on his face at Naruto's reaction. Kurenai isn't here, Naruto. Ino's just talking about her. You don't have to be scared of getting scolded again. I'm not afraid of Kurenye-sensei trying to bust me again for smoking, Naruto said confidently. What's she going to do, make me smoke another carton? Good, I still have all of the ones from last time she made me do that since I don't even smoke that much. He then heard Asuma let out a groan. What's the matter, Asuma-sensei? Since Ino asked. Asuma said, directing a pointed look at an innocent-looking Ino, yesterday with Kurenai was fine, then we started talking about the finals of the Chunin exams and got into an argument over whose team was better. So we made a side bet, either you guys go further than Team 8 in the tournament, or more of you get promoted out of this than more of them. Shikamaru raised an eyebrow. So what's the bet? He asked, wondering if it would even be worth his while to put forth the effort to bother winning it for Asuma. Don't worry about it, Asuma replied coolly without missing a beat, keeping it concealed. It was just like the way he handled most things with Kurenai, and the kids weren't dumb. They knew that it was more than a comrades thing, more than a relationship as general colleagues. They just weren't sure how far it went, and the two boys on the team weren't really listening to Ino's prattling theories on a secret relationship, at least not until more facts were on the board. It wouldn't be anything you'd be interested in anyway. Naruto raised his hand and shimmered in, well, what about me? Asuma looked down at Naruto as if he were actually thinking about it. because of who's been giving you personal training over the last month or so, I'd say that in a few years you'd appreciate it, but for now no. Naruto gave him a squinted-eyed look of confusion before Asuma's point finally hit him. He went wide-eyed before nodding dumbly, "Good boy." He ignored Shikamaru's mumbling of troublesome and let the matter drop. Deciding to change the subject, and speaking on his training with Jiraiya, Naruto spoke up again, "Asuma-sensei, could you go ahead and show me the next step of controlling my wind element?" he asked, putting his hands together in a beseeching fashion. Asuma scratched his head, not sure how he was going to explain this to the kid. "Damn Naruto, you've got a funny time of asking." There was a week left until they were to set out for the exam's final round. He was aware of the fruits that Naruto's Kage Bunshin technique could breed in the instance of speeding up his training, but this was less than a week to work with. Even if he could have fully focused each day on it, he wouldn't finish in time, and even if he did, then what? All that would have done would have been to open the door for him to be able to control the higher level techniques and to allow him to begin creating his own wind-based ninjutsu once he got the proper way to do so down. It simply wasn't practical at the moment. "There's just no time, Naruto," Asuma said to him, "and I know about what you can do with your clones. But even then there just isn't enough time for you to get it down. And even if you did, it wouldn't help you in your actual matches." He saw the boy visibly deflate at that and put a hand on his shoulder. "I didn't say I wouldn't help you out at all, and I never said that you'd never learn how to do the last step, it's just that now isn't the time for it." Naruto cocked his head to the side curiously, "So you are going to help me out?" A grin spread back over his face. "How? Freaking brat," Asuma said as he ruffled Naruto's hair before asking another question, "But I thought you were learning a special technique from Jiraiya-sama." By special technique, he meant the Kyuubi's chakra. Naruto figured that someone that needed to be kept in the know of how he was trying to access the Kyuubi's chakra was Asuma, thus he told him. "I learned it," Naruto said simply, leaving it at that. His eyes turned away from Asuma as he did so. That was something he would have to look into later, but for now seeing the kid so out of character just didn't seem right. "Well, I have a move for you that you might be able to use dash dot." "Is it Hein, Flying Swallow?" Naruto asked excitedly. He really couldn't extend his blade's reach the way Asuma could any further than the little inch that the coating of wind chakra provided his weapon, because simply coating his blade in wind chakra wasn't the technique. "Seriously, what is it with you and that jutsu?" Asuma said, shaking his head. "No, it's not Hein. I've got something new for you altogether, a very old move of mine. I can't do it anymore with my equipment, but your machete should work just fine, especially with that new little customization you added onto it," he said, flicking the chain and the bell at the end of Naruto's machete. Naruto looked down at the weapon curiously. "It's just a chain, Asuma-sensei, it's not a big deal." He drew the machete out of his sheath and held it up to look at the chain he had attached to the hilt closely, only for Asuma to more or less snatch it out of his hands. "Oi! Shut up, kid," Asuma said, dangling the sharp blade by the chain at the end, surprised that he actually used something sturdy instead of the cheap materials he expected. "Yeah, this is perfect. Now let me show you how this jutsu works and you can get your clones cracking on trying to get it down." 2 days later, 1 week until Chunin exam final round. Jiraiya sat by himself in the corner of a bar, drinking quietly with an air of contemplation around him. Despite his status as a living legend, he wasn't approached by any of the shinobi in the bar for anything. He was just giving off that aura that he didn't feel like being bothered at the moment. Which was why there was some surprise in the place when the chair across from him was filled by another person. "I didn't think you were one for drinking in the daytime, Asuma," he commented dryly at the bearded jonin in front of him. "You're one to talk, Jiraiya-sama," Asuma replied in a joking manner to the man. "Aren't you supposed to be a role model that every shinobi should look up to?" "Who said I wasn't? I'm a fine, upstanding ninja," Jiraiya said before deflating back to his previous state of more or less sulking. Asuma sat with the man in silence before finally breaking it by speaking again. "So are you going to make me ask, or are you just going to come out with it and tell me?" he said expectantly. "Naruto's been all weird since after Wednesday. That was the last day he was with you, and from how he was talking to me the other day it sounds like he isn't training with you any longer. So what happened?" "I got him to activate the Kyuubi's chakra. This time he was able to control it," Jiraiya said plainly before getting a proud inflection in his voice. He did, great actually. Better than I expected. Since he had expected Naruto to try and turn him into a stain on the earth after the genjutsu had broken, the most he had hoped for was that Naruto would have pulled back from trying to kill him enough to get satisfaction out of beating him to a pulp and leaving it at that, otherwise he would have had to seal his demonic chakra away. Asuma's eyes widened. That's great. He was confused then when Jiraiya shook his head. It's not great. Not really once you hear about how I did it. I didn't even bother telling Sarutobi-sensei what I did since he probably saw it through that damn crystal ball anyway. Jiraiya muttered as he took another sip of his drink and shook his head again. Minato did a fantastic job on the seal. Really top-notch stuff. Only the most extreme conditions can get the kid to pull out the demon's chakra. Exhaustion, fear, anger, despair, pain, things like that make it easier for him to draw upon the chakra. Asuma remembered Naruto's episode in Nami no Kuni. That was the best point he had heard as to how Naruto drew upon the chakra by far. But he then knew where Jiraiya was going with his explanation. So in order to get him to draw upon the chakra again I pushed him to his physical limits, and I can tell you one thing at least. If anyone beats on the kid during the tournament the way I did the other day then I'll be one surprised son of a bitch because I kicked the hell out of him and kept him conscious. Jiraiya said, sounding revolted with himself as he took another swig. Then I cast a genjutsu on him, Magen, Narakumi no Jutsu, demonic illusion, hell viewing technique. Asuma let out a low hiss, understanding the situation. Naruto sucks at genjutsu. He said quietly so that only he and Jiraiya could hear. The white-haired man nodded, having picked up on that fact after witnessing the effectiveness of it on Naruto. Whatever he saw had to have been something that upset him. I guess we'll have to get started on teaching him how to break that. Jiraiya let out a laugh that didn't have any humor behind it. I think that one will be all up to you, Asuma. After it was all over I told the kid that I didn't expect him to forgive me for what happened then. He might have the capacity to forgive people that are close to him or people he thinks are friends, but tell me something. After he beat up that Nukenin girl in Nami no Kuni and they made up, did he trust her again after that? Asuma shook his head. He didn't untie her, he didn't even show her his back a single time until we parted ways. Come to think of it, even when they thoroughly disarmed her on the way out of Nami no Kuni, not only did Naruto never let Haku see his back, he didn't let her see Asuma's back, just in case she would hold a grudge and attempt to take the man's life for killing Zabuza. Wow, he didn't even notice that until right then. Naruto was a pretty trusting guy, but apparently if you broke that trust then you were on his shit list until further notice. Did he say anything to you? Asuma asked Jiraiya, because he won't even say anything about it to me. He just said yeah, sure and left. Jiraiya informed him. He seemed pretty mixed up about the whole thing. Letting out a deep sigh, he continued to talk. I'm not much for praying or anything, but if the kid actually wants me to help him again after the other day that would have to be something of a miracle. Asuma just leaned back in his chair and placed a cigarette in his mouth. Well, you might as well try to talk to him sooner or later. It's obvious you don't hate Naruto and he probably knows that. You can probably get back in his good graces. But if you'd wait that would help me out. I need his head clear for when we head back on up to Tetsu no Kuni for the finals. Jiraiya watched Asuma light up his cigarette and take a breath and had a flashback to his work with Naruto over the last month, bringing deep laughs from the man that confused Asuma. Oh, sorry. It's just that it's kind of obvious where he get it from now. There's nothing like seeing 40 Kagebunshin all sitting cross-legged in the grass glaring down at practice seals with lit cigarettes in their mouths. He then had another thought and his grin turned lecherous. Come to think of it, with that Kagebunshin ability of his he might be able to conduct research better than I ever did without the threat of any repercussions for it. Both Jiraiya and Asuma sat there thinking about being able to use Kagebunshin the way Naruto did for less than pure-minded reasons before yet another thought hit Jiraiya like a bolt of lightning and he created one that immediately ran out of the bar faster than anyone could follow. Asuma completely understood. And was officially never so grateful that he knew how to properly make Kagebunshin. At this point he only wished he could make massive amounts of them like his student. Damn it, his old man would probably say no once he questioned him on why he would want to learn it and Naruto probably wouldn't do it either, at least without making Asuma cough up hind first. Achoo. Naruto sneezed and wiped his nose before frowning deeply and throwing the explosive tag he was preparing away to the side. God damn it. Naruto yelled once he realized that he had just wasted his last strip of sealing paper by messing up because of that sneeze. On his day off, following some time spent at Shiho's house helping her recatalog her books and time spent hanging out with Shikamaru and Chuji doing a whole lot of nothing, he had taken to just getting his affairs in order for the next week since by Thursday his team would be setting out with the other finalists to Tetsu no Kuni. One of these affairs saw to it that he was merely hanging out in the woods to make an abundant supply of explosive tags because you could never have enough explosives, and in Naruto's own personal opinion enough explosives could fix any problem. Deciding that he had spent enough time just sitting there and that he might as well take some time to go grocery shopping since he had some free time, Naruto let out a large burst of his chakra for his sonar jutsu to see how close he was to town. Once he did so, however, he heard a shriek that set him off once he felt the signature behind the person that had let out the noise. "I see you, motherfucker!" Naruto shouted before swiftly moving into action. Nobody gets the drop on Uzumaki Naruto. He yelled before he said something else as an afterthought. That much. What did her sister see in that weird blonde kid? It had been a question she had been asking for an entire year to herself and her sister as well, even though she had never gotten an answer from her. All her sister would do whenever questioned on the matter was turn red and clam up. In some cases she would try to stammer out a denial of the fact that she was somewhat into the guy, but that just solidified that she indeed was if she was that embarrassed about it. Her sister was so nice, timid but nice, and there seemed to be no particular reason that she would find anything attractive about the weird blonde kid. He wasn't that good looking, but then again it wasn't like he was ugly. The thing about him being kind of short wasn't that big of a deal breaker. Those whisker marks on his face looked exotic and his blue eyes were brimming with emotion that she didn't much see when she looked in the eyes of those of her clan. He didn't seem to be that smart from what she had seen upon running into him in the past with him wandering the forest in the Nara compound a few months back muttering about how he couldn't find his sensei. But then again he was working on Fuinjutsu as she watched him. From what she knew of her own clan's dabbling in the art it was very complicated to say the least, so he couldn't really be dumb right. He didn't look like a very effective ninja either and she heard that he was a rookie from the buzz around town. On the other hand though, that same buzz was saying that he was one of the Konoha teams that were about to head out to Tetsu no Kuni to compete in the final rounds of the Chunin exams along with her sister's team. That had to mean that either he was just as good or better, or he had one hell of a team to help him get that far. He also had very unusual chakra, and a lot of it. Seriously, this guy had a lot of chakra, a whole lot of chakra. Okay, so there was something about this guy after all. And she had to admit he was rather entertaining though when he sneezed and yelled after screwing up an explosive tag. She almost started laughing once she saw that, almost, because if she had then she would have blown her cover, even from the range her Kekai Genkai allowed her to spy on him from. Hey, she hadn't been placed in the academy yet. She had to take training into her own hands outside of what her father did somehow, right? To do otherwise would be lazy. And maybe if she could find out what her sister liked so much about him she could come up with some way to help her get him. She deserved that much since even she had to admit their father had been rather cold to her a few months back after she graduated. She hoped he wouldn't be like that once she entered the academy. Wait a second, she couldn't just let her mind wander. She had a mission, self-presented of course, to do. And just as she thought that, from the boy she was watching a blinding ripple of chakra burst from his body. Her ability to see chakra itself came back to bite her because as her Kekai Genkai witnessed it, she saw the equivalent of flash bomb going off in her eyes, again. Him and that damn move of his managed to get her in the past. I see you, motherfucker. Oh, and there was the fact that after he did that he was always able to know where she was at the time. Nobody gets the drop on Uzumaki Naruto. This was not good, that much. Kami, her eyes hurt. Damn that bastard. She deactivated her jujutsu and tried to run, but unlike the last few times she tried to spy on him he went too far into the forest for her to beat him back to town by just running away. She did her best, but he was so much faster than her. He wasn't a joke at all. And thus she finally came face to face with Uzumaki Naruto and expected the worst. That was not the first thing she had expected someone to say after catching the person that had been spying on them. Naruto was nearly beaming while he had been chasing his would-be spy through the forest. He had a bone to pick with this person since after he felt them skulking around him back before he got his basic elemental training. It was a different feeling from the first person he had felt spying on him when he had first learned the jutsu, but it was similar enough that he just figured that the person had changed and had gotten better like he had. This was not what he was expecting in the least. He pointed lamely at the person he had managed to corner. "Why are you watching me train, little girl?" he asked nicely, though in a curious tone of voice. She was around Kano Amaru's height, give or take an inch or so, and had long dark brown hair with bangs that went down to her back. She wore dark blue shorts, a sleeveless dark blue v-neck shirt, and a mesh shirt underneath the v-neck. The little girl was currently rubbing her eyes as if they were irritated. He kind of wanted to make her stop so that she didn't hurt herself. She finally took her hands away and looked up at him with her white, pupil-less eyes. She had an owlish expression on her face as she stared up at him before realizing that she had been compromised and fell into a taijutsu stance, getting Naruto to tilt his head to the side in confusion. "Prepare yourself, Uzumaki Naruto. I won't let myself get captured by my target so easily." It took Naruto a second to realize that she was going to try to take him on. "What? I'm not going to fight you, you're miniature," he responded, gesturing with his hands to their size difference. "Then move aside and leave me to my own devices," the little girl said placidly, but still holding up her stance. Naruto just gave her a deadpan stare in return. "Not when your own devices include spying on me. Now if you don't mind, could you tell me what you're here for?" "That's a secret I'll take to the grave," she said seriously, getting Naruto to palm his face before her eyes suddenly changed. Her pupils became slightly visible where before they were non-existent, and the veins around her eyes on the temple area became bulged and visible. "Let's see how you like Hyuga-style taijutsu. The feared Jukin, gentle fist, ... Hyuga," Naruto said, taking note of her features and name, and then of the name of her clan technique just before she sprang into action and closed the distance on him. "Hitosa Shivisu Iryoku, index finger thrust." The little Hyuga girl shot out her right hand at Naruto's chest with her index and middle fingers extended. Hearing an attack from the girl, Naruto stepped back out of her range, but she kept coming forward with attacks, using her fingers for precise strikes that Naruto kept backstepping out of the way from. Finally, sick of evading the girl, Naruto stepped back with his foot on a tree and started scaling said tree backwards until he was firmly out of her reach, 15 feet off of the ground, staring down at her. "Stop trying to attack me already. I'm a ninja in your village, I'm on your side, you know." The little girl blushed in embarrassment, realizing that he was right. Not only could he not attack her since she was technically a civilian, not even an academy student yet, he was an active member of Konoha's shinobi force. Trying to attack him was akin to treason, hence she stopped her attack and bowed low for forgiveness. "I'm so sorry, Uzumaki-san. Please don't report me to Hokage-sama, I don't want to go to prison." Naruto raised an eyebrow at the strange little girl and dropped to the ground where she was still bowing towards him. "Sarutobijiji wouldn't send a little girl to jail just for messing around with me," he said, patting her on the head as he felt rather weird at the moment. Nobody bowed to him, and there was something very wrong with the fact that this little girl was doing it. "So what's your name?" "Hyuga Hanabi," she responded rather elegantly. This girl kind of reminded him of someone. "Hyuga. Oh." She reminded him of that Neji kid without the aura of jerk radiating off of her. She was kind of quiet too, like Hinata. Only she didn't seem shy at all. She could at least speak to him as if he didn't intimidate her. "And you are Uzumaki Naruto. You're heading to the final portion of the Chunin exam next week, aren't you?" "My sister is as well." Hearing that this little girl he had never met knew about his advancement so far in the Chunin exams put a grin on Naruto's face until he processed the other things she said. "Wait, your sister?" He only knew one female Hyuga, and there was only one of them in the tournament. "You're Hinata's sister?" Hanabi nodded in confirmation and Naruto narrowed his eyes at her. "Have you been spying on me to try and help her with a strategy to try and beat me in case we face off in the tournament?" he asked accusingly. Hanabi was about to more or less call him stupid in her own special way, but then she realized that the way he had discovered her and the past times where he had been aware of her presence could be construed as her spying on him. "No. That's not what I was doing, Uzumaki-san, honest. I've never seen you train or any of your techniques." "Well, Other than your concentrated chakra pulse, of course. My what? Naruto asked her in confusion. He didn't have any technique like that. Your concentrated chakra pulse. Hanabi urged him as if he had just let it slip his mind. Of course I probably have the name of the jutsu all wrong, but it's really brilliant. She insisted spiritedly. He didn't know that a Hyuga could get so excited about things, but then again she couldn't have been any older than 8 years old. I was looking directly at you with my Byakugan and it was terrible. You released that wave of chakra from your body and I felt like my eyes were on fire. Hanabi's expression as she thought about his jutsu made Naruto just want to give her a hug. The effect of the little Hyuga girl's white eyes nearly quivering with tears as she remembered his chakra pulse was in Naruto's opinion completely adorable, not that anyone would ever know that he felt that way. Guys didn't think that things were adorable. That word was expressly forbidden from the male vocabulary except for extreme circumstances. Jiraiya's book had reinforced this sentiment in one of its many run-on allusions to things that had nothing to do with Fuinjutsu. Once again, Naruto placed his hand on the girl's head once he realized what she was talking about. Oh, you mean Chakra Hankyuti to no Jutsu, Chakra Echolocation Jutsu. My jutsu hurts your eyes, little firecracker? Sorry about that. He said apologetically. Hanabi puffed her cheeks out at the nickname and shook her head to get his hand off of her head. 8 years old or not, she was still a main branch Hyuga and she wasn't going to just take that. It's fine. She insisted haughtily before going back to normal once she was sure Naruto wouldn't put his hand on her head for a third time, but yes. Your jutsu hurts my eyes. It's like you poked me in them with chakra. She rubbed them again because she could still see stars from Naruto's jutsu. He wanted to say that he was sorry, but it didn't seem like that was enough even though he couldn't tell what he had done wrong if someone had asked him why he felt guilty. There was only one thing he could do as far as he was concerned. Do you want to get something to eat? That seemed like a good way to apologize to him. Feed someone and that's a pretty good I'm sorry gesture. Hanabi stopped rubbing her eyes and looked at Naruto strangely before her stomach growled and she nodded slowly. Free food was free food. An hour later, Ichiraku ramen. Alright, yeah. We're starving to death, right Akamaru? Kiba said rather boisterously as he pushed open the curtains of the stand to enter, small white dog in his coat riding along. Once he did so, of course he saw someone pretty familiar sitting up at the counter. Hey, it's Naruto. How's it going, man? Naruto turned around on his stool and saw Kiba and Akamaru grinning at him. Kiba? Akamaru? Hey, what are you guys doing here? Kiba shrugged and he grabbed a seat next to Naruto at the counter. Well, we're hungry. This is a really good little stand, so why not eat here, eh? Akamaru let out a yap of agreement from the front of Kiba's coat as he was panting rather excitedly. So why are you here? Same as you. Naruto said with a grin of his own on his face. It's my day off and I just wanted to grab some lunch. Also, it was the easiest place to go to take Hanabi for some lunch and she agreed since she hasn't been here before. Kiba's eyes widened slightly. Whoa, you're on a date. Part of him had to applaud that even during the training period Naruto could find the time to take a girl out. Naruto gave him a squinted-eyed look and shook his head slowly. No, that's weird. Hanabi's 7 years old. He said, gesturing to the little girl on the opposite side of him that wasn't even paying attention to what he was saying due to her eating that was reserved, yet still pretty rushed. This is Hanabi. Say hi, little firecracker. Hearing Naruto's nickname for her put a tick on her head and she stopped eating long enough to turn towards him and let him have it over his choice of address, but when she did she got a look at Kiba and Akamaru. You're my sister's teammate, aren't you? Hinata's sister. Kiba said once he had gotten a good look at her. He had seen Hanabi before, he just hadn't met her. How she had managed a run-in with Naruto was beyond him. How'd you end up hanging out with this bum? Hanabi shook her head with a frown on her face. Naruto Asuma isn't a bum. He's really cool actually. She said with a smile. He's saying he's sorry for hurting me. You hurt Hinata's little sister? Kiba asked Naruto, at this point kind of hoping that wasn't the case, at least not enough of a case for the little girl to take it to the rest of her clan because of who her father was. You're going to get your ass dashed. It was an accident. Naruto grumbled, look at her, she's fine. And I'm apologizing and being nice. You don't have any complaints about me, do you, little firecracker? He asked Hanabi, who had gone back to eating her ramen in a respectable manner. She stopped when he asked her his question though. I wish you'd stop calling me by that name. Naruto shook his head firmly. Not happening, little lady. He said as Teiuchi set a bowl of ramen in front of him. Ah, thanks a lot, Teiuchi Ajisen. The man chuckled and gave Naruto a nod at the boy's grateful response. He turned towards Kiba and spoke to him. And what will you and your dog have, young man? He asked, understanding the Inuzuka bond with their ninkin. Kiba gave him a small smile and waved him off. None for us yet. We're waiting for some people to arrive before we get anything to eat. Thanks anyway though. You've got people coming? Naruto asked while simultaneously digging into his food with vigor. A nod and a small laugh came from Kiba. Yeah. My team's been working on our own all week and we decided to link back up today for a small meeting. I chose here to meet for lunch, so yeah. At that moment he sniffed the air and was able to distinguish a scent through the delicious smelling food. Speaking of my team. I didn't think you'd go in before your teammates arrived, Kiba. Hey Kurenye-sensei. Kiba said, turning around in his stool to face the pretty, red-eyed lady and waved to her while Akamaru let out an excited bark. Naruto on the other hand was frozen in his seat with his chopsticks and ramen stuck at his mouth. Hanabi noticed this and started poking at him, trying to get him to react. I was going to wait outside, but then I found this guy inside and decided to say hey. Kurenai gave her most boisterous student a smile at the welcome and saw who was sitting next to him. Oh, well, hello there, Naruto. How are you? She greeted to the blonde Jinchuriki. I am not smoking, Kurenye-sensei, ma'am. Naruto suddenly exclaimed, almost startling Hanabi out of her seat at his loud proclamation. Kurenai raised an eyebrow at the random outburst. That's good. Okay, smoking was pretty distasteful. But if that's how he was reacting to her sudden presence, then maybe she went overboard trying to break him of the habit? Especially since the attempt backfired anyway. Hearing that Kurenai was not present to break his balls over smoking, Naruto let out a sigh of relief and went back to eating while Hanabi gave him a look of, what the hell was that, over what had just happened. Kiba-kun, Kurenye-sensei. A delicate voice filtered through everyone's ears as Hinata stepped inside of the ramen stand. She greeted her sensei and her first teammate with a smile until her eyes panned over to Naruto, who was still eating. Naruto-kun. At that point she noticed the little girl sitting next to him waving at her. Hanabi-chan. Hi Hinata Onisama. Hanabi greeted her older sister with a sly smile before pointing at Naruto. Look who I found. Remembering what Hanabi had been asking her about from time to time and then seeing Naruto turn around in confusion after finishing his food only to smile and wave at her, Hinata turned bright red, getting Hanabi to roll her eyes as she had expected this much. At least she was still conscious at this point, but that was probably because there was a good 4 or 5 feet of distance between them. In an effort to get herself under control, Hinata directed her attention to her little sister. Hanabi-chan, what are you doing outside of the clan compound without our father? I was bored, and father wasn't around to train me, he was busy today. So I just left. Hanabi answered lamely. I found Naruto Onisama walking around the village and followed him to the forest, and he caught me. She said, embarrassed at admitting such. She was supposed to be a powerful heiress of her clan with a Byakugan more powerful than her sisters. Then he said he would buy me lunch, so I said okay. Naruto grinned at Hinata after Hanabi had recounted how she had run across him in the first place. Yeah, I'm a giving man. All I do is give. Hinata's blush at being spoken to by Naruto went unnoticed by him as he turned to elbow Kiba jokingly in the side, just like the ass-kicking I'm going to give everybody during the finals. Kiba turned to Naruto and got in his face at the challenge. I've told you already, damn it, you can't beat us. Me and Akamaru are going to put you down. Kurenai shook her head and held back a smile at the banter as she was to be the responsible adult in the situation and was prepared to keep the clash between the two hotheads from escalating. This disguise is highly illogical. Why, you ask? Because a rock is not a perfect square. Hearing about a square rock made Naruto sigh as he paid for himself and Hanabi and went outside. Everyone's attention was then directed outside to where Shino was standing with his hands in his pockets staring down at a box painted like a rock with eye holes in it. Get out of here, weird guy. The box hissed lowly, you're going to blow my cover. Shino raised an eyebrow at being called weird by a person in a box. If this is your cover, then I would consider it blown already, my friend. Naruto just stared at the rock with a dry look on his face before slowly pulling out his machete and speaking in a fake acting voice. Oh look, a rock. I wonder if it's the kind that I can sharpen my weapon on. Let's find out by hitting it repeatedly with my razor-sharp machete. Kiba caught on to what Naruto was doing and grinned. Hey Akamaru, I don't think we trained enough this morning. How about we break one more rock for good measure? And look, there's a rock right there. Isn't that convenient? Naruto raised his machete over his head with an evil look in his eyes, and Kiba cracked his knuckles with a similar look in his as well until the rock finally exploded in a large, colorful puff of smoke. Why can't I ever get the gunpowder right? The smoke cleared, allowing Naruto to see Konohamaru on the ground before standing up and pointing at Naruto directly. Boss. Fight me. He demanded. Everyone just stared between Naruto and the small boy pointing at Naruto and taking note of the similar goggles on both of their foreheads. Naruto just stood in place until he suddenly yelled, "Damn it, Konohamaru, go to school." Everyone face-palmed due to it being Sunday, a day off for students. No way. Konohamaru yelled back, "You're going to be a Chunin. So if I can beat you, then I don't need to go to school, they can make me a Chunin right now." He pulled out a shuriken and held it at the ready. Get ready, boss, because today's the day you lose. He threw the shuriken at Naruto and it was actually on target. Shino had been watching curiously as to why the Hokage's grandson wanted to fight Naruto. Kiba had been holding back his own laughter the entire time. Hinata had been looking between them nervously. Hanabi wondered how this had all even started, and when Konohamaru pulled out the shuriken, Kurene's latent instincts made her want to walk over to Konohamaru, slap the weapon out of his hand and scold him for playing with weapons. But then he threw it. Naruto used his machete to deflect the shuriken and marched up to the now scared Konohamaru before grabbing him by the collar and rapping him on the top of the head with the handle of the weapon. Don't throw deadly weapons in public, damn it. Especially not at friends. He said as he let the boy go. You blocked it anyway, so what's the big deal? Konohamaru grumbled before Kurenai held out her hand in front of Konohamaru's face and caught the falling shuriken that Naruto had redirected. He slowly turned towards the stern-looking lady that he was sure was going to confiscate his shuriken now. Oh, that's the big deal. Kurenai spun the shuriken around by the circle in the middle, using ninja tools and jutsu as a frowned-upon practice in village streets. Frowned upon, but not forbidden. You should save things like this for the academy. Konohamaru pouted at being admonished. School sucks. Hanabi frowned and crossed her arms over her chest. Stop being a brat, she said to the slightly older boy. Hell, she wished she could go to the academy instead of being stuck in a dojo with her father all day for her training. This directed Konohamaru's attention towards the girl that was the closest to his age. And who are you? He said before pointing at Kurenai. I know her because she's Uncle Asuma's dash dot. He felt low killing intent from the Jonin and switched up what he was saying. Comrade. He tested, and once the killing intent dropped he knew he was safe. Yeah, she's his comrade. But you? I don't know dash dot. His adolescent brain began to work and put things together to make sense in his own mind. Little girl his age, hanging out with Naruto in what seems to be his spare time, calls him Naruto Onasuma and seems to value his opinion and point of view. Konohamaru ran at Naruto flailing punches only to be stopped by Naruto's hand on his forehead. Boss, you jerk. You had me replaced? I just started going to the academy, it's not like I just disappeared. How could you? Naruto kept holding the boy back from possibly trying to punch at his privates. What are you babbling about? Are you upset about little firecracker? Stop calling me that. Hanabi snapped at Naruto before regaining her mostly stoic demeanor once eyes fell on her due to the outburst. Please. You gave her a nickname. Konohamaru shouted as he stopped struggling and sank to his knees prior to having large streams of tears pouring from his eyes. You didn't give me a nickname. What makes her better than me, boss? She's a girl. He said, getting Hanabi to glare at him. We're both dudes. We can both do dude stuff that you can't do with a girl. Naruto stared at him with a twitching eye. Me and you definitely can't do dude stuff because you're still too young to know what dude stuff is supposed to mean. He then blinked in realization, As a matter of fact, I think I'm still too young to know what dude stuff is supposed to mean. Damn it, sensei, you and your book. I'm down for dude stuff. Kiba chimmered informatively, raising his hand before Kurenai, Shino, and Hinata looked at him, putting him on the spot. What? Dude stuff is great. Watch. He said before giving Shino several good-natured punches on the arm with a grin on his face. Dude stuff. Shino just stared at Kiba expressionlessly. Don't do that. He said plainly, in a way that sent shivers down the others' spines. Kano Amaru ignored this and pointed at Hanabi. That's it. I'm not letting myself get replaced like some rusty kunai. I'll fight you for the spot as boss's number 2. Hanabi looked at the weird boy before her lips quirked in a momentary smile. Why would he even want a number 2 that just wants to fight him and beat him up? Shut up. Kano Amaru shouted, blushing in embarrassment. You're going down for the count. There's no way you can beat me. My name is Sarutobi Kano Amaru, and as the future Hokage I won't lose here. Hanabi just smirked and stood in her fighting stance. Well, my name is Hyuga Hanabi, and you aren't going to have much of a choice in the matter in just a moment. She was actually excited to test her training on someone in an actual fight. All of Team 8 was just staring at Naruto, who shrugged at what was going on with the children standing between him. He didn't know what to say to them. What can I say? I guess kids just love me for some reason. I'll beat you in one shot. Kano Amaru said as he formed the ram seal. If you're really boss's number 2, then you've got his special technique down by now. Hearing special technique, Hanabi figured it was Naruto's echolocation jutsu and covered her eyes, prepared to try and fight blind and without her Byakugan if necessary. Oh shit, I don't like the sound of that. Naruto thought to himself as there had been only one thing he had taught Kano Amaru in the time they had spent together. Kano Amaru wait dash dot. Too little, too late. Warak no jutsu, sexy jutsu. In a puff of smoke, Kano Amaru transformed into a very attractive nude brunette woman that winked seductively from a rather provocative pose. How do you like this? Kiba's nose started gushing blood on top of Akamaru's head. I like it a lot. He said with a wolfish grin on his face. Shino stayed unchanging, but due to his high collar most people couldn't see the blood trickling from his own nose. Hinata poked her fingers together rather tentatively, unable to even look at the mortified Naruto, who couldn't believe Kano Amaru's complete lack of situational judgment as he directly ignored the fact he had done the same jutsu in public in the past without hesitation. Naruto-kun really taught you that jutsu? There was no way her Naruto would ever come up with something so sleazy, right? Kano Amaru then suddenly transformed back when he noticed that Hanabi wasn't even looking at him. Hey, open your eyes. How else is my awesome jutsu going to beat you if you aren't even looking at it? If it would beat me, then why would I look at it, stupid? Hanabi said in a teasing voice as she kept her eyes closed, prepared to try and use her other senses to fight. She was blissfully unaware of the chaos going on around her at the moment. Why can't I ever beat anyone with that jutsu? Kano Amaru asked before a shadow passed over him, getting him to look up at a rather furious-looking Kurenai. Now Kano Amaru. Kurenai said in a deceptively sweet tone, even though the small boy saw the aura of a devil over her. Tell me again, who taught you a jutsu like that? Kano Amaru pointed a shaky finger at Naruto, who was standing still nearby. I see. Kurenai said before turning towards Naruto with the same sugary tone of voice and pleasant look on her face. Naruto, I think you and I should have a talk about things that are appropriate and things that you should and shouldn't pass on to children. Naruto took a step back and put up his only defense that he had been saving for over several years. I never had parents or guardians to teach me tact. And when he saw Kurenai's red eyes soften momentarily in some sort of maternal empathy, he almost fist-pumped in victory. Almost, because it still didn't work, which left him with his other out. I'll see you guys during the exams. He hurriedly said as he made the ram seal and disappeared in a puff of smoke. Kurenai blinked at Naruto's sudden disappearance before snapping her fingers once she remembered. Oh, I forgot he could do that. She said, deciding to let the matter end since chasing him all over the village wouldn't have looked good at all. With that, she decided to escort her team inside. Hanabi stared at where Naruto had been now that Naruto was gone. Wow, Naruto on Asuma is kind of fast. Yeah, he is. Kano Amaru said in agreement. I'm still his number 2 though. I don't really care. Hanabi said out loud in a dismissive manner, but on the inside she was sticking her tongue out at Kano Amaru. She was the number 2 dammit. She was way better than him. Jutsu list. Hitosa Shivisu Iryoku, index finger thrust. D-rank taijutsu, Kekai Genkai. Offensive. This very basic attack consists of a practitioner of Jukin using their index and middle fingers to jab at their opponent, directly aiming for a vital spot on the enemy's body. A precise strike can equal death in one blow depending on where contact is made, but the point of impact is small and can be avoided from causing such fatal damage by good evasive movement. Like other techniques born of the same style, it sends chakra into the target to cause internal damage. Hey, you're not a genius. Who cares? Read this and you won't suck at Fuinjutsu, by Jiraiya. Jinchuriki, Power of Human Sacrifice. Let's take a minute to talk about a little something that you should hope to never come face to face with on the battlefield. Still though, you have to be aware of this just in case you ever do. Better to be safe than sorry. A Jinchuriki is a human being, flesh and blood like you or me, only they have creatures of incredible power sealed within them, the Biju. 9 demons of absurd strength differentiated by their amounts of tails and the powers they possess. The key word here however is sealed boys and girls, but we'll have more on that later. A Jinchuriki is gifted with incredible powers bestowed upon them by housing the demons within their bodies. Some can manipulate extra limbs akin to their particular tailed beast, some can breathe fire, some can even transform into the demons themselves among tons of other abilities that many others could never begin to attempt otherwise. In return for their powers however, the Jinchuriki are generally lonely people. Feared for their powers and the demons that they contain within, most are hated and discriminated against. Many are constantly in a battle for control of their own wills against the demons they contain, as the creatures are willing to take any opening or doubt in the heart of the possessor to break free. This does not help matters whatsoever with their personal lives. Some are even driven insane with the combination of it all. A Jinchuriki is made by having a Biju sealed within a person as I wrote above, and each village has its own particular sealing style to contain the monsters. You're not getting any of them out of this book since they are all village secrets that are supposed to be passed down to those worthy, not just given out because you're curious about them. Somehow removing a Biju from a Jinchuriki will kill the container, and killing a Jinchuriki will result in the death of the Biju within as well. When put in dire straits of life or death, a Jinchuriki could possibly go berserk due to the intervention of the Biju trying to protect them and by proxy itself. In the case of handling this you had better either be a badass of the highest order, like myself, or you should put your head between your knees, grab your ankles, and kiss your ass goodbye, hypothetically of course because there is always a way out of any situation. The best way to deal with a Jinchuriki is not in a straight-up firefight because that is never a recommended course of action to take. Instead of that, try to render them ineffective by disrupting their flow of chakra, or if you're far enough along you can simply cut it off altogether. On the coming pages you will learn the arrays and kanji combinations for setting up basic seals for Fuinjutsu that revolves around chakra itself. This is a more precise process than you've previously dealt with, so prepare to spend quite a bit of time getting this right. Chapter 23, Time to Shine. The final 3 days prior to heading out to the finals were just a touch-up period for most, a time to make sure all of the tricks they had taken the month to learn were all set and ready for tournament time. It wasn't necessarily wise to go full blast so close to the event and risk injury or coming in exhausted. Most adhered to this way of thinking with the exception of a few, Rock Lee for example. Still, some competitors found it necessary to do so in order to master their more advanced techniques, right down to the last day before leaving. Uchiha Clan Compound. Breathing heavily, Sasuke pulled his left arm out of a wooden target, not caring much for the singe marks and the splinters in his hand. Around the yard he had been training in, there were multiple targets of all sorts, human-shaped dummies, rocks, more wooded targets, all of them with similar holes punched in them presumably by Sasuke's left arm. Sasuke held his left arm, keeping himself from wincing at the feeling of pins and needles stabbing every portion of the limb mercilessly, so 2 shots a day is my limit. That's going to have to do during the exams. Sasuke said to himself as he stood up to walk on home. Kakashi told me not to even use it unless Sakura or Chuji were in serious danger, to stick to the other moves I've learned. I've also got another advantage too. Sasuke thought as his eyes flashed the Sharingan for a moment, There are 3 matches before our first round matchup. If anyone uses hand seals, I've got a chance to maybe pick up a new move to surprise the competition with. With the feeling that his extra training would most certainly come in handy, Sasuke decided to head home for the night. All of the Konoha competitors were supposed to leave early the next morning in order to make it in time to get the genin one more day of sufficient rest prior to the fights. He did not see the figure that had been watching him, hiding his presence and taking notice of Sasuke's new skill. In the low light of the setting sun, a small reflection came off of the person's glasses as he tilted them up on his face. I know one very particular person that's going to be very interested in your development. I'm sure you'll impress. Elsewhere in Konoha, Naruto had a look of satisfaction on his face as he sat against the trunk of a tree and sank his machete blade first into the ground. He had been using the trees as test dummies for his combat techniques, a last run-through of his own personal skills before tomorrow came. He felt he had a good little list of tricks for his opponents to get a piece of, especially the delightful little jutsu that Asuma taught him for his machete. It sure wasn't flying swallow, but it was damnably versatile and it covered up a gap in Naruto's repertoire, so to speak. He had to chuckle to himself in a pleased manner as he picked his weapon of choice back up off of the ground and looked at it, a grin forming widely on his face. Thanks for the help, Asuma-sensei. He then dropped his grin and a small smile took its place. And you too, Ero-sensei, I guess. Like it or not, perhaps using the Kyuubi's chakra wasn't a bad thing. He was still in control and he was still himself. If it was a situation where he had to use it or die, then it was better that he had access to it than not. Getting pushed to that extent shouldn't occur that often, he thought. How many times would he face off with someone tough enough to push him like Jiraiya did, or someone able to upset him like Haku did in making him think she had killed his team? Never again if he had anything to say about it. Shikamaru and Ino were ready for certain in Naruto's opinion. They had worked hard, all of them, and his teammates had picked up their share of nasty surprises just in case. There wasn't really much more to do at this point. He was getting rather excited at the thought of it, and he still had a few days of traveling ahead of him before he could even think about fight time. He had too much pent-up energy to just sit still and do nothing. He just had to get up and run, even if it was just on the way home. There wasn't anything to do but train though. Shikamaru and Ino were at a party with Shuji, thrown by their clans to celebrate the fact that they were in the finals, something that apparently was going on with all of the clans in Konoha that had representatives in the finals. It was a strictly Ino-Shikacho affair, but that was alright with Naruto. Their families were proud, and he wasn't really family, so how would he be invited? Even if he had been, it would have been because they probably pitied him, and he certainly didn't want that. It really made him feel the squeeze of the fact that his clan didn't particularly exist anymore. The reality was certainly something that sucked. He could only imagine how Sasuke felt about his own clan because he actually knew them before their deaths. He'd have to wait for the commencement festival that was apparently going to happen the night before and after the tournament if he wanted to spend some time with his team. For now he'd just chill out by himself at home and get ready for the road in the morning. Asuma was probably with Kurenai again, and the young blonde knew enough to recognize that it was certainly not his place to step in there. Damn, even 2 months of hanging out with Jiraiya managed to stick something other than ways to fight in his brain. And as he arrived at his apartment, he found the man that he had just been thinking about standing outside of his apartment. What, you didn't feel like breaking in and waiting for me this time? Naruto asked dryly. You're telling me that you didn't booby-trap the doors and windows after the last time? Jiraiya replied much in the same manner with a small smile on his face. Naruto just stared at him before moving past and unlocking his door. You could take it. The only one that's trapped with explosives is the front door. Opening said front door, Naruto walked inside and gestured inwards to Jiraiya, who still stood patiently outside. Are you coming in or not? Just waiting for the invitation, Gaki. Jiraiya said as he walked inside. I think I've taken enough liberties with you recently. It'd be kind of messed up to break into your house after what I had to do the last time we spoke. He then let out a hard exhale and a cough as Naruto buried a fist in his stomach. Okay, good hit. Jiraiya wheezed out as Naruto pulled his fist away. There. I feel better about it now. Naruto said, flexing his fist out after punching Jiraiya. Damn, that old pervert was sturdy. That was like punching a life-sized brick of semi-hardened clay. Maybe if I get pissed later I can hit you again. It's a one-day offer. Jiraiya said with a deadpan stare before Naruto hit him again in the stomach. Brat. Another punch, gah. And the offer is off of the table. Kami, it's like getting hit with a sledgehammer. A smug grin came over Naruto's face at that comparison. I got banned from trying to use the taijutsu posts at the academy for practice because I finally broke one of them. Then Iruka yelled at him and chased him around the school for 2 hours, luckily he didn't have to pay for it. After rubbing his stomach a few more times, Jiraiya gave a laugh. Don't get cocky, brat, you're not the strongest person that's ever hit me. Not even close. You're just good for your age. You could beat me like that all day and I'd be fine. He abruptly held up his hands defensively when he saw Naruto lift his fist again. Damn it, don't do it. I come in peace. Seeing Jiraiya again made Naruto remember that while he might have had a pretty miserable experience with the man, he did seem legitimately remorseful for whatever action he did to coax the Kyuubi's chakra out of him. And he did have a great time working with Jiraiya until then. He had definitely been picking things up from the man and the entire ride had admittedly been a blast right up until the final day. Damn, I'm a total pushover. Naruto thought to himself with a sigh. He didn't want to hate Jiraiya. He had gotten tired of hate a long time ago. When he was younger he wanted to hate the villagers that treated him like he didn't matter, he wanted to hate his position in life before becoming a genin, he wanted to hate how much he sucked at proving he could get himself out of the academy with his 3 failures, he used to want to hate everything, but he just got sick of it. I know you come in peace, Ero-sensei. Naruto said as he plopped down bonelessly in the first chair his body could reach. Jiraiya raised an eyebrow at Naruto's reaction and shut the door behind him so that passers-by couldn't hear Naruto gripe, why can't I just ever be mad at the people that do things to me? That would make things so much easier. Hell, I don't even want you to bribe me or anything to get me to forgive you. Jiraiya crossed his arms over his chest and stared at Naruto curiously, are you sure? Because I was about to teach you a dash dot. Yeah, I'm sure. Naruto said, not really leaving any room for argument. Weird. Most kids would be doing backflips at the prospect of learning a new jutsu, actually, keep that one on hold for a bit. If I live through the exams we'll see. There, that was more like it, it better be badass. Jiraiya scoffed and turned his head away from Naruto, everything I do is badass. He then turned serious and leaned against the front door, so do you think you're ready? At that line of questioning, Naruto frowned in deep thought. Flashback, 1 day ago, Team 10 training ground. Shikamaru picked at the bark that had just been freshly stripped from a tree, though not by a traditionally manual manner as one would have normally seen, especially since the tree also had some small gashes in it. Okay Naruto. I think you've got it. Naruto absently spun his machete around on the chain at the end of it with a huge grin on his face. Yeah I know, I'm awesome. Not bad huh? He then found that he had to stop spinning the weapon around for safety as Ino threw herself over his back, wrapping her arms around his neck. Ino, I'm swinging a machete. I'm so proud of my Goldie-kun. Ino said brightly, rubbing her cheek against Naruto's whisker-marked one, eliciting a growl from her embarrassed genin teammate. Such a quick study. A smirk came upon Shikamaru's face as Naruto looked over at him with pleading eyes to get Ino off of him somehow. Well, having 50 to 100 clones working with the jutsu and giving the results back to you kind of does that for you. It made him wish he knew how to use Kage Bunshin like Naruto did. Hell, it had Kage in the name of the jutsu to boot. Oh well, Naruto had to have his own special moves too, and if Shikamaru could make clones like Naruto then they would probably be just as lazy as he was, and the fact that you have a new trick opens up a few doors for us come fight time. It should make things easier, at least I hope so. Ino stopped rubbing her cheek against Naruto's to give Shikamaru a deadpan stare. Nothing we ever do is easy, and I'm starting to think it's because you keep wishing out loud that things will be easy. You're jinxing us Shikamaru. With as much as you hope nothing ever goes wrong, I'm surprised we haven't been jumped by a gang of S-ranked nukenin by now. Ino then went deathly silent before palming her own face and dragging it downward. Damn it. I just did it, didn't I? Uzumaki-kun. Yamanaka-san. Shikamaru-kun. Everyone's attention turned towards the edge of the field where Shiho was running towards them before coming to a stop in front of them with her hands on her knees, breathing heavily. All of Team 10 had the same thought, seeing as how it was a weekday and Shiho had to work. Did she just run all the way here from the Konoha Archive Library at the top of the Hokage Monument? It was quite obvious that she had, and that she was somewhat out of shape due to not being an active duty genin, so they gave her the time to catch her breath before asking her why she was here. Shiho-chan? Naruto asked, all of Team 10 fighting the urge to facepalm when Shiho sank to her knees and rolled over to her back to lay down for a minute. What are you doing here? Don't you have to work today? Yes. Shiho said, still breathing rather heavily and laying on her back, but I have information. She said, abruptly sitting up and adjusting the glasses on her face in an attempt to look as presentable as possible. This Gaara person that you said can control sand, his technique seems identical to reports from files on past encounters that Konoha forces had in the past, during the Second Shinobi World War. I was taking some time to go through some of the records that I had access to. Ino took the break as an opportunity to sit down on the ground and listen up. Okay, so do ours. Me and Shikamaru's clan techniques are old too. He controls sand. Oh. She finished, making feigning fear gestures at the idea of sand. Sand that he uses to crush things and suffocate people. Naruto said matter-of-factly, getting Ino to stop mocking sand in a hurry. That's pretty important to remember, Ino-chan. Shikamaru knew that Naruto had apprehensive thoughts about the Suna Genin Gaara, and he trusted Naruto's judgment on dangerous enemies. There was always the possibility that they would somehow face off down the line, so knowledge would be power in this instance, so if his sand control's been seen by others then there's a way to beat it, right? Shiho perked up once she heard Shikamaru speaking to her and blushed nervously as she responded, well, there's something about the sand that you need to know first of all before you start looking for ways to beat it. Her nervousness dropped and she looked over to Naruto with a frown, though it was only for a split second. Well, the man recorded in this book as having control of sand was a Jinchuriki gifted with the natural ability to do such. She finished quietly. Naruto's jaw dropped at the thought of Gaara being a Jinchuriki, since that was clearly what Shiho had been implying. On the other hand, Shikamaru and Ino didn't have the faintest idea of what a Jinchuriki was, nor were they looking at Naruto's face, otherwise they would have known flat out that it was a big deal. So, Ino finally said after waiting for a minute to let Shiho continue, what's a Jinchuriki and why is it worth bringing up? I mean, you ran all the way here and nearly killed yourself. Shiho let out a sigh, inwardly proud of the look on Naruto's face. Uzumaki-kun knows what a Jinchuriki is without someone telling him. He must really be taking that learning thing to heart. Of course she also didn't know that Naruto was aware of his own status as a Jinchuriki, but that was something else altogether. Jinchuriki, power of human sacrifice. Humans with the powerful Biju monsters sealed inside of them. You do know what those are, don't you? Ino just gave her a blank stare before blinking her blue eyes. Refresh my memory. Shiho returned her stare with a deadpan look. The Cuba that attacked 12 years ago, that was one of them. Ino's eyes then did a great impersonation of the way Naruto's had looked moments before at that revelation. So you're saying that this Gaara kid has a demon stuck inside of him like the Cuba? How the hell would people even do that? She turned towards Naruto. Can you do that? Fuinjutsu is really powerful and dangerous. Naruto said, speaking up for the first time since the topic came up. If anyone out of the lot of them could even come close to calling themselves an expert on the matter, it was him for more than one reason. It can do all kinds of things, and no, I can't. I don't think I want to learn how either. He replied honestly, squinting his eyes and crossing his arms with conviction. He didn't want the power to make someone like him. His life was bad enough just because of what was stuck inside of him. He would be sick to his stomach if he ever had to do that to someone else. Shiho held up one finger in a lecturing manner. Ichiba no Shukaku. That's the best guess as to what's sealed inside of Gaara, since the Shukaku is traditionally acknowledged as Tsunagakuers. He's supposed to be their secret weapon, with powerful abilities and a touch of instability. A touch. Naruto thought with a raised eyebrow. Clearly either the Jinchuriki in the records had enough wits about him to fake being sane in front of the man that had logged it in, or Gaara was just plain homicidal for the sake of being homicidal. Then how do we fight him? He's supposed to have all of that power. What's he doing in the exams? Shikamaru asked rhetorically, not really expecting an answer. However, he received one from his teammate. He's a human being just like anyone else. Naruto said tersely, he's just got more power than a normal person would. Naruto himself was a Jinchuriki and he wasn't all-powerful. He had been shown by Jiraiya that having the Kyuubi in him didn't make him unbeatable, and that meant that Gaara wasn't unbeatable. Treat it like another opponent that we can beat. At least we know his jutsu. That's more than he's got on us. All he knows about me is that I can make clones. That's not enough to find a way to beat me. It's not enough to beat us, Dateba yo. Shikamaru gave Naruto a long, hard look and saw something in his friend's eyes. At the end of the last stage of the exams, Naruto seemed petrified at the prospect of fighting Gaara. What had changed over the last month to put that much swagger back in his step? Still, it was either solve the problem or get squashed. Besides, what were the chances of both teams meeting in the final tournament battle anyway? And with odds like that, it was clearly more than certain that they would in fact be meeting Gaara and his team in the finals, which meant that he needed to get cracking and come up with a solution. I told you I'd find a way to help in case we had to fight that guy Naruto. I'm not going back on my word. As troublesome as it may be. Shiho smiled at the lazy genin. Shikamaru-kun is so cool. End flashback. Flashes of his clones and their complete decimation by Gaara flew through his head, but then Naruto thought of Ino and Shikamaru and what he knew they had been doing all month to get ready. In addition to that, Shikamaru had promised him that a solution would be found to Gaara's sand defense. He believed in his team and he believed in himself. We're ready, Ero-sensei, for sure. Besides, he still had to get out of the first round before he could rightly begin worrying about any of that. Even though he didn't know anything about Team 10's first round opponents, he didn't want to be accused of overlooking them and wind up beaten. Oh, then you'll definitely win for sure. Jiraiya said with a smirk on his face. Naruto thought he was being facetious at first, but the man quickly squashed that thought with his next words. Look here, Gaki, you've got the heart and the soul, all you needed was the guts to go forward. What about the talent? Meh, talent's overrated. Jiraiya said, waving him off. Naruto almost fell out of his chair at the very blunt, near backhanded statement. Does that mean that I don't need talent to win this, or that I don't have any talent in the first place? Oh, who am I kidding? Both of those options suck. Jiraiya ignored the look on Naruto's face and continued, listen, you're going to bleed, you're probably going to take a beating, and by the end of this tournament you're going to wish with all of your heart that you never have to do anything like it again. But you'll gut that out and do it anyway. If you really think you deserve it, and if you believe that winning the whole thing is your mission, then you'll endure all of that to do so. Take the things that you want and don't let anyone say you can't or let them stop you without doing everything you can, and then a little bit more after that, to get there. He then opened the front door and stepped outside, finishing his point on a lighter note. No student of mine is going to get beaten in the first round either. You're representing me here, so make them all see how good you are. That will make them all see how amazing Jiraiya-sama is for sure. The student reflects the skill of the teacher. As Jiraiya's loud, guffawing laughter rang out while he walked away from Naruto's apartment, Naruto himself was left with a strange peaceful feeling in his stomach. No jitters, no actual doubts, none of that. He honestly felt ready with not a thought in his mind to the contrary. Ero-sensei, if your perv books didn't make you so much money, I'd say you need to start touring for inspirational speeches. 2 days later, Tetsu no Kuni. Even in the snowy environment of the samurai dwelling country, it was clear that a festival was carrying on. The streets of the host village were filled with vendors of all sorts from countries all over the world. Each nation invited to view the final rounds of the exam had some form of representation, either through stands set up for cuisine, peddling wares, or buying and selling commodities that would be far harder to obtain in their countries normally. It was like a massive, grandiose, international swap meet for merchants with the means to travel freely to the normally locked-down country. They could either sell their own in-demand goods to foreigners for higher prices than they could get at home, or get their hands on rarer things that they could sell back in their own villages for huge profit. Fortunately, the samurai of Tetsu no Kuni were out in full force in their capital to ensure nothing got started by any of the visitors. No attempts at trying to rob any of the merchants, and no fighting among the shinobi there, only to view the tournament that was the centerpiece of the whole thing. Otherwise stiff penalties would be paid in full, monetarily or physically. Still, any underlying tension between the major villages there to visit seemed to be set on the back burner. Anything that any of the more bitter spectator shinobi felt had to be settled up between them and the other villages was to be done vicariously through the genin in the tournament. That was the unwritten understanding of the chunin exams. It was more or less anything goes as long as it was in the structure of the competition. I've already gotten an audience with another team that was supposed to be fighting one of the Konoha team, so now I've come to you all. Geto said with a nasty grin on his face as he sat in a rather upscale-looking restaurant, his table surrounded by a fully armed guard. He had no desire to associate with the rabble outside in the festival. He had business to attend to. You see, a pair of these bratty Konoha teams that are littering the event managed to turn a rather lucrative business arrangement of mine sour a few months back. And I figured, what better time to collect scalps than now when I can get away with it. He chuckled darkly towards his guests. So here's the deal. You're to fight some no-name brat named Uzumaki's team in the first round. Yes, Naruto was a no-name as far as Geto was concerned, despite the fact that there was a newly built, mammoth bridge with his name slapped right on top of it sitting between the mainland and Nami no Kuni. And you want us to bury those runts, right? Sitting across from the shipping magnate was the Iwagakure team. The shaved-head de facto leader of the squad, Hisashi smirked as he asked Geto his question. You'll pay up for each one we can kill, right? 1 million for each of you for every one of them you take down. Geto said informatively, just so you have the option of taking out one or two of them and make it seem like an accident. A little plausible deniability even in something like this is never a bad thing. Besides, I award ambition in case you decided to get all 3 of them. Just don't tell your jonin or any of your village reps. I don't think they'd be too ecstatic to hear that you're more or less freelancing. Hisashi looked at his 2 teammates and got unanimous nods from both of them as the Fohawk sporting member of the team Masaru spoke up. We're in. How many times will a group of genin ever going to get the chance to get rich? The third teammate Jun nodded in agreement with a rather hard look on his face. Besides, Hisashi said again, cracking his knuckles at the thought, I was already going to kill that blonde kid with the stupid look on his face. I might as well get something out of it. Well, that's one less thing to worry about. Geto thought to himself as he sat back in his chair, satisfied at the moment. He might not be able to get a shot at the 2 Konoha jonin that had ruined things for him. Kakashi and Asuma already had significant bounties on their heads, and adding more money to it at this point wouldn't inspire anyone else to go out of their way to hunt them, but the kids were still more than weak enough to pick off, and these exams were the perfect opportunity for it. He was petty enough to more or less put out a hit on them to the tune of 3 million ahead. His pride was worth that pittance any day after what they had started. And those genin that work for my new business partner better get the job done as well against those brats with the Uchiha kid on the team. Geto thought as the Iwa genin got up and left his presence, but from the work I've had done over the last few months I have to say that Otagaku or Shinobi certainly know how to get the jobs I need done. He certainly seemed receptive enough to take my mission though when I said I needed his genin team to put down that Uchiha's team. I wonder why. There were video screens of various size set up all over the place, flashing through the tournament competitors and the odds of either team winning their particular bout in the first round. Further odds would be set up in between fights after the first round ended, so the entire tournament was a major gambling event, and the bookies came from far and wide to make their own bones off of those looking to bet on the genin in person. The multiple dignitaries, elite shinobi, nobles, and high-profile visitors there for the event had more dispensable income than they would find back in their own towns and villages. Well, most of them should have at least. All right, time to make a fortune. A fair-skinned blonde woman with a quite sizable bust and long blonde hair tied into 2 loose ponytails going down her back walked through the streets of the host village for the exams. She had on pink lipstick, a grey sleeveless kimono-looking blouse with a dark blue obi keeping it tied closed quite low to show her cleavage, dark blue pants, black open-toed heeled sandals, a necklace with a beautiful green jewel on it, and an open green robe with the kanji for gamble on the back. The Uchiha advancing is a sure thing, so I'll put a safety bid on him. I'll put a good amount up on all of the Konoha teams to make it out of round 1, and for the kicker the Suna team to walk off with the whole thing. She seemed rather excited at the thought of the bets she planned on making. Following behind her was a woman with shoulder-length black hair and dark eyes. She wore a long black kimono with a white obi and sandals similar to blonde lady and had a worried look on her face as a small pig wearing a pearl collar and a red jacket trailed along with her. Tsunade-sama, what could you possibly be gambling with? Didn't we have to run from Chanokuni because you got us into debt again? I paid that off in the end, Shizune. Tsunade said, waving off the dark-haired woman's concerns, and we're about to make back what we lost before right here during this tournament. It's a sure thing. Who could possibly judge odds in a competition of shinobi better than someone like me? She said in a boasting manner. Shizune simply followed behind with a deadpan look on her face, maybe someone that has enough luck to back up their amazing judging skills for one. She let out a sigh and looked down at the pig walking with her. We're going to be on the run again for debt after this, aren't we, Taunton? Anoink in the affirmative was the response from the small animal. Why does she like doing something that she's so bad at? She was so absorbed with fretting over her master's splurging of their already rather questionable funds she managed to bump into a smaller figure that had been walking her way. Ow, damn it, Shikamaru, this still doesn't count as you being right. Oh, I'm so sorry. Shizune said as she looked down and saw a young blonde child sitting on the ground with a fallen massive stuffed toad and a multitude of other stuffed animals on the paved street. As she looked at him, she noticed his headband and blinked at it being a Konoha leaf plate. Moments earlier, with Team 10. Shikamaru shook his head as he and Ino followed along behind Naruto. They weren't rightly sure where they were headed in the festival as they had gotten separated from Asuma earlier for what he called bonding with his comrades. Said comrade that came to fetch him for said bonding was Kurenai though, so none of them were holding their breath on seeing Asuma again for at least several hours, leaving them to their own devices. Said devices involved Naruto dragging them to every winnable game that there was, or at least it seemed that way. He would either lose and curse repeatedly before trying again until he won, or he would win and move along to the next one. Needless to say, by this point he was toting around a lot of prizes, stuffed toys, candy, and other treats, porcelain masks like the kind Umbu wear, straw hats, and other things. Do you think you won enough stuff, Naruto? Shikamaru said, amused as Naruto tried to navigate his way down the street, his vision hampered by the mountainous multitude of his spoils of war. Both he and Ino were wearing their weather-blocking cloaks while Naruto was back wearing his winter clothes, his normal sleeveless orange windbreaker with a padded long-sleeved blue shirt to cover his arms as well as a pair of thick orange pants. You weren't saying that when you wound up getting some of the stuff that I won? Naruto said, turning his head for a moment to glare at Shikamaru. You were too lazy to win that thing that you said you wanted, so I had to do it for you. How are they, by the way? Shikamaru didn't vocally answer Naruto's question, he simply gave a thumbs up and held up a small black package and opened his mouth to show a mouthful of small gravel-looking candies that were fizzling audibly, loud enough to clearly be heard even in the midst of the crowd. That's what I thought. Naruto said, satisfied with Shikamaru's lack of a response, or maybe he just felt like letting his candy answer for him. Lazy bastard. I'm sure you thought this was funny or cute or something. Ino said as she walked with her teammates, carrying something that Naruto had given her very quickly after winning it. He had won her a pig-shaped wallet and had immediately handed it over to her with a huge grin on his face. And she had been wondering why he had been trying so hard to guess one winner right on that weird rat race game. Now she knew. Naruto shrugged as he went back to his job of trying to navigate through the throng with only the use of his repeated chakra pulses. Who needed eyes? Not him, funny? No. I did think it was cute though, Ino Buta-chan. He replied cheekily. Ino just started staring a hole in the back of Naruto's head at the nickname that had been given. Just so we're clear, I will stab you, you know that right? I have no problems with that. Especially since I know you'll heal by tomorrow. She then decided to bring something else up. Why don't you just seal all of that stuff in a scroll or something? I left all of my scrolls in the room with our stuff. Naruto explained, it's not like I came out here expecting to win so much useless crap. He then noticed quite a few kids running around, laughing and actually taking notice of how many toys he had with him. What the hell? He had to get rid of most of that stuff anyway. And with that thought in mind he started handing out some of his winnings to the kids that he passed. Guess I'll share my good fortune. He said jokingly as he did so. While Ino and Shikamaru figured it to just be a good gesture from a good-natured guy, it was kind of something else too. Something similar had happened for him back during a Chunin exam festival that had been held in Konoha years ago. A person had been giving out prizes that he had won, probably to impress a girlfriend or something, and had actually given something to a little Naruto, his frog wallet Gama-chan. Even when the man had actually spotted Naruto, he had not taken the smile off of his face, nor had he retracted his gift, much like how a lot of other adults would have. Here you go, kid. Have a good time and cheer up, would you? You'd probably feel a lot better if you smiled instead of frowning so much. The man had been a Konoha shinobi, and while Naruto didn't remember seeing him again after that, he took that advice to heart and kept the wallet, even now. That man was part of the reason he wanted to be a ninja in the first place. Maybe he could be some kid's random hero one day? Which was also the reason he was handing out prizes. Maybe he'd wind up giving a gift to some random down on his luck kid, much like he himself had been. If he did, then the child would definitely appreciate the gesture. He most certainly did. After giving away a dozen toys to the rather energetic kids, getting more than his share of approving looks from the people around them, Team 10 continued on their way. That was a really nice thing you did, Naruto, Shikamaru said. He wished he could say he would have done the same, but that would have involved winning the toys in the first place and the effort of doing that and then fairly dispersing presents. Too much work for him. It's not a big deal, Naruto said bashfully as he continued forward down the street. I don't need all of this stuff anyway. What would I possibly do with all of it? I do want to keep the gigantic frog though. That's my trophy. Ino smiled at the amicable atmosphere they were in. It was very calming, especially considering that they would be fighting tooth and nail in death matches the next day. I think that's a Toad Goldie-kun. Really? Well, maybe he'd been hit in the head one too many times to notice the difference when he had been fighting with Jiraiya's summons. There's a difference, Naruto said questioningly as he looked back at Ino. While doing so, he bumped into someone in front of him and fell backwards onto the ground, spilling his festival prizes all over the street. I told you that was too much stuff, Shikamaru commented before emptying more of his pack of candy into his mouth. There was nothing wrong with overachieving, and the sooner Shikamaru realized that, the better. Ow, damn it Shikamaru, this still doesn't count as you being right, Naruto said from his place on the ground. Oh, I'm so sorry. Naruto looked up at a pretty dark-haired lady that had an apologetic look on her face, and a pet pig nearby. Okay, he could roll with that. It wasn't the weirdest thing he had seen by a long shot. It's alright, Naruto said, not really bothered at all, from his place on the ground as he adjusted his goggles on his forehead. Hey, do you want a stuffed animal or something? Take your pick. He then added something as an afterthought with a stern look, not the giant frog though, that one's mine. Giant Toad Goldie-kun. Fine, Toad Inobuta-chan, Naruto said as a correction before a snowball hit him in the back of the head. You know I'm going to get you for that, right? He did not see Ino stick her tongue out at him and pull down her eyelid as a rebuttal. As Naruto picked himself up off of the ground and shook the remnants of the snowball out of his hair, the lady he had bumped into was busy collecting up his fallen stuff. I'm sorry again, I was just preoccupied with something else. My name is Shizune and this is Taunton, she said, referencing the small pig that oinked happily at being introduced. Nice to meet you, lady, Naruto said as he picked up the rest of his things and took what Shizune had collected from the ground back into his possession. I'm Uzumaki Naruto, and these are my teammates Shikamaru and Ino. Both teammates waved at Shizune, and we're going to win the whole damn tournament tomorrow and get promoted. You can do it, a mustached street vendor on the side of the road yelled encouragingly with a strange accent. Thanks, random guy, Naruto shouted back with a grin on his face. It looked like he had an underground fan base in Tetsuno Kuni. He wondered if anyone would make a sign and hold it up during the competition to get his attention. That would be cool. So you're the long shot team. Team 10, and Shizune's attention found its way directed towards a rather well-endowed blonde woman walking towards them with her hands on her hips. I was talking to myself for about 3 minutes before I realized you weren't behind me, Shizune. And here I find you here held up by one of the fighting Konoha teams. The long shots to boot. Shizune had the humility to look sheepish at being left behind by her master, Tsunade-sama. Oh, well, I bumped into this young man and knocked him and his things down. I just stopped for a second to help him. Tsunade-ha, Naruto thought to himself, finding her name really familiar. Why do I think I'm supposed to know that name? I don't think she's dangerous, or at least I don't think she's dangerous to me. Ino decided to attempt to placate the rather confident and powerful-looking woman. She looked like a kunoichi. She was just helping us out for a bit, but what did you mean when you called us the long shot team? Tsunade raised an eyebrow at Ino and decided to answer her. Well, even though you were apparently highly touted after your graduation from the academy and you're a Yamanaka, your teammate wasn't so highly looked upon. But he's a Nara and that's just the way they are even when they're outstanding, every one of them I've met anyway. Her eyes then drifted to Naruto, but then there's the talk about your third teammate. Naruto perked up as he anticipated Tsunade to begin talking about him. She knew about him? What did she know? Apparently it was what everyone else knew that shaped their thoughts about him at first. There was some great news. They say he failed his graduation exam 3 times before passing in some cop-out Foshian later. Tsunade started in a very blunt manner before continuing, with 6 months under his belt it has to be luck that he managed to get this far even with that nasty business in Nami no Kuni that people talked about, but there's no luck here and unfortunately for you and your Nara teammate sweetie I don't really see you making it further than advancing out of the first round. You two would be so beaten up by the end of it that even if you won there'd be no way you could win in the next round. She sounded rather confident in that pick. Naruto of course took offense to this. You say that like I'm not even going to fight in the first round. Tsunade turned her brown eyes to Naruto and gave him a once-over glance. I'm not saying you won't fight, I'm just saying that it probably won't matter too much in the end. Having worked with Naruto for around 6 months and gotten an opportunity to get to know him quite personally, Ino was the first to verbally jump to Naruto's defense. How could you say that if you haven't even seen him fight before? That information is all old. No one that knows anything could possibly tell you what Naruto can really do. Who do you think you are to say something like that, lady? Hearing that Ino had a little fire in her put a smirk on Tsunade's face. So the cute little rookie genin girl had a backbone. A rather sturdy one too. I think I'm pretty much one of the most qualified people in the world to say so. You really haven't heard of my name before? I guess people don't talk about me and my team anymore after what my bastard teammate did. Putting Tsunade's name together with some of the things she learned in the academy, mostly the fact that Tsunade was the measuring stick by which every kunoichi in the world was compared to, got Ino's blue eyes to widen once she realized who they were talking to. Yuri dash dot. Shikamaru shook his head and inadvertently cut Ino off. I don't really care one way or the other about who you are, but you aren't going to just talk down to our friend like that and expect us to just sit here and smile about it. It's okay guys. Naruto said, putting on a brave face by grinning as he set his things down on the ground once more. She's just the kind of person that wants me to give up. I've dealt with things like this before my whole life, remember? Even you guys said stuff like that to me before all the time. While it was true, Ino didn't particularly want to be reminded about that. It was funny back when everyone thought he was talentless, but he had long since dispelled that way of thinking. Now if everyone else would just realize it too, that still shouldn't matter. She doesn't even know you. She'll know me after we win this tournament and get promoted. And then she'll know me when I make it all the way to Hokage. Naruto said brightly and full of confidence. Tsunade was taken aback momentarily by Naruto's spirited declaration and his appearance. Nawaki? No, he's not, he's just some stupid kid. So you want to be Hokage? That explains everything then. Wake up and face reality, brat. All that would create for you would be a life full of sacrifice that would kill you in the end. She turned away from Team 10 and began walking away. Only a fool with his head in the clouds would want to be Hokage. There's no reason to go so far, Tsunade-sama. Shizune thought rather bitterly as she could see Naruto physically shaking to hold himself back from doing anything rash. Even Ino moved to him and put a hand on his shoulder. He's just a kid. There's no reason for him to not have a dream. Well, I personally don't really see anything wrong with a person having their head in the clouds. Shikamaru said calmly, getting Tsunade to stop walking away once she heard how easygoing he sounded even after how she had intentionally tried to chop Naruto down. I mean, clouds are cool. Have you ever stopped and looked at one? They just calm you down and mellow you out. They make you feel, I don't know, good. He tried to explain, rubbing the back of his head sheepishly as he didn't think he was wording it right. I guess I suck at this whole speech thing, but my point is kind of simple. Having your head in the clouds makes sure that you have something to look forward to even when everything sucks, otherwise life would just make you all bitter and crabby. He smirked to himself, kind of like you I'd imagine. Tsunade narrowed her eyes at Shikamaru, why you little dash. Besides, someone on this team has to have some kind of ambition. Shikamaru said, gesturing his head towards Naruto, we've got a system worked out between us. I'm the pessimistic realist that lets us know when we're in over our heads, keeps our feet grounded, and thinks of a way out no matter how troublesome it is. Ino's the bossy one that can make us do anything and keeps our heads on straight, she's the happy medium here. Naruto's the metal of the team, the one that thinks we can always come out on top and never lets us quit or say we can't. He's the dreamer, our grit. Without him we wouldn't have any edge behind us at all. So he might be a bit of a fool? Who cares? That's Uzumaki Naruto, a hard-headed dash dot. Stubborn as an ox. Ino said, following up without even being prompted to without a beat. Brash. Loud-mouthed. Bright-eyed. Grinning, cherub-faced. Optimistic. Tenacious son of a bitch. And that's why he's more or less the soul of the team. Shikamaru finished with a careless shrug. But fortunately not the brain. Ino said with a firm nod, proud of her reasoning on Naruto's character, if he was then he'd run us off of a cliff like a pack of lemmings, as a matter of fact he actually has before. That's our Goldie-kun though. Naruto had been hit with so many heartfelt, yet backhanded compliments over the last several seconds he didn't know whether to feel flattered or to be pissed off, so he just settled for a combination of both. Wow, you guys, that was great. I just want to hug you both, and stab you at the same time. I really appreciate it. Oh, also, for the record, I hate you both so much right now. He turned his attention to Tsunade though, but we'll see who's really a fool once we win the whole tournament. If you don't think we can then sit back and watch. A sharp tongue lashing didn't break the kid down or make him lose his cool, probably because his teammates had his back. And now he seemed more determined than ever to go out and prove something. That damned grin of his made her think of Nawaki though, she couldn't even bear looking at it any longer. I'll see you tomorrow when your opponent wipes the floor with your face. Tsunade said as she turned and started walking away. Naruto gathered up his things and let out a scoff before walking off on his own way with Ino and Shikamaru, whatever. I'll be sure to look for you in the crowd after I kick some major ass, you old hag. What was that? Tsunade snapped angrily as she turned around abruptly, ready to teach the little runt some manners. Samurai be demmed today. Once she did so, however, a small slug plushie immediately bounced off of her forehead and landed in her hands as she deftly caught it. She noticed that Shizune also had a little stuffed mallard duck in her grasp as well, probably from Naruto's stash of prizes. Naruto didn't turn back around as he held onto all of his stuff and kept walking. It suits you for some reason, he said as an excuse for giving it to her. Uzumaki Naruto, future Hokage, and Team 10 of Konohagakure no Sato, all future Chunin exam champions and soon to be promoted Chunin. Don't forget that, alright. Eventually Team 10 disappeared within the crowd of people still enjoying the festival despite the perennial overcast sitting over the skies of mountaintop host village in Tetsu no Kuni. Tsunade looked in the direction they disappeared even when it went long past the point of seeing them anymore before looking at the slug plushie in her hand and tossing it up and down a few times. What a noisy little punk, she said absently, though she didn't instantly dispose of the little trinket. She kept a hold of it as she headed back on her way to where she was planning to go before the little run-in. Come on Shizune, we've still got places to go and things to do today. Right away Tsunade-sama, Shizune said, taking a few steps before sparing one more glance behind her. What a strange boy, she commented, moving to catch up to Tsunade as Taunton let out an agreeing oink. The next day, Chunin exam's final round location. The next day the Jonin sensei of all of the competing genin led their teams to the predetermined locale for the tournament. It was a rather mammoth building with enough seating to hold 20,000 people max and a very high ceiling. Others unfortunate enough to not find a way to procure a spot, either due to not being a sensei, or not being important enough to garner a ticket on demand, found themselves out of luck once the place filled up, as there was no wiggle room for stragglers begging for a standing room only spot. Needless to say, scalpers that had been able to get tickets made a killing off of the negligent average citizens that wished to see the show in person. Those unable to get inside the arena were not out of luck though. For a nominal fee they were allowed to watch the event on a series of large screen in the middle of the village, Likewise a signal was sent out from the highest point of the village to Tsunagakure, Kanahagakure, Iwagakure, Kumogakure, and Kirigakure so that the citizens of those villages could view the tournament in one place as well. For example, in Konoha a large screen was set up in the Coliseum that would have hosted the final round had Konoha hosted the exams that year. It was similar to that in the other villages as well. Tickets were sold due to it being a live event and a copy of the event was meant to be made for posterity to be kept in the Konoha Archive Library. The battle arena itself was set up in a rather diverse manner. It was massive. A pit-like setup surrounded by high walls on all sides to keep the spectators from getting too close to the action. In the circular center of the arena there was a rather tranquil Zen garden-looking setup, series of aesthetic high rocks set up looking like meditation surfaces, well spread out sand on the ground, and a stream running all through the center of the arena with a slight bend to it, 30 feet in width across, a tough stone bridge sitting over it. From there on one dominant side of the stream there were rows of evergreen trees and shrubbery, a forest-looking portion. Though it wasn't too tough to see through all of the plant life there were quite a number of uses for that portion of the field. On the other side of the field it was rockier, very uneven, and much rougher than any other part of the field, almost like the beginning part of a mountain range. In both opposite portions of the field there was one small pond each. If one were to view the field from directly above it would akin to a yin-yang, one side barren and lifeless, the other with nature life. The only thing keeping it from being a completely traditional-looking yin-yang was the circular center that made up the garden, meant to be the neutral starting zone for fights to begin. This was where the teams were all gathered to wait for the event to begin. Yesterday during the festival it was so romantic. Sakura more or less gushed to Ino, Sasuke-kun and I got to see so much of everything they had to offer. All of the food, the shops, everything. Ino rolled her eyes, it doesn't count as a date. She said as if it were obvious, you're talking like Chuji wasn't there too. Sakura stopped her wonderful thoughts of yesterday with Sasuke once she realized that Chuji had in fact been there as well. As a matter of fact every place they went had been a place that Chuji had wanted to go to. Sasuke just followed him, and not that Sakura knew it, the onyx-haired Uchiha had a twitch in his eye most of the day that wished that Sakura would stop talking to him. That shouldn't matter, right? She said rather desperately. Ino let out a chuckle as she shook her head. That's like saying that I went on a date with Goldie-kun yesterday, only Shikamaru was there tagging along. It doesn't count for it. Too bad, but apparently Sasuke-kun knows what he wants and it doesn't seem to be you. Take that back. Sakura said, pumping her fists with punches rather angrily, it's not that. I just need to show Sasuke-kun that I'm more than just a pretty face and brains. She ignored the and forward remark from Ino to keep speaking, albeit with a tick mark on her head. That's why this is perfect. If I can help us get promoted then that'll prove it, especially if I can walk all over you in the process. You'd better hope you get to show off enough before we fight. Ino said with a confident air, because then we'll see who walks all over who. If you haven't secured a promotion by then you won't be getting it over me. Sakura merely smirked at her not-so-subtle challenge before thinking of something else, say. Goldie-kun is Naruto, right? She ventured a guess, getting a nod from Ino as they both looked over at Naruto who was looking pretty odd at the look of the arena and at all of the people filing in. You know, a second ago when you were talking about him and what makes a date you sounded like you could deal with dating him. Ino's eyes widened momentarily before narrowing perceptively. Don't go there, Sakura. Sakura on the other hand found a separate chink in Ino's armor to pick at instead of bashing her head against the brick wall that was declaring that Sasuke would be hers to Ino's face. What? I didn't say anything. And to be honest, once you get past the goofy part he's got good points. Not Sasuke-kun's good points though. Naruto and Sasuke are two totally different people. Ino insisted, trying to end the trail of the conversation. What makes Naruto cool aren't the same things that makes Sasuke-kun cool. It's totally not fair to compare them. Sakura stared at Ino for a second before sighing and running a hand through her pink locks. I guess you're right. But if you're saying that Naruto is cool, then sorry, I just don't see it. You will. Ino said as if it were already assured. I'm pretty sure of that. Meanwhile, elsewhere Naruto was trying to get his nerves back down. He was fine until he saw all of the people that started entering the stands. That put a little shell shock into his heart, if only for a moment. So, That rematch that you were crying about 6 months ago. He turned around to see Tenten standing there with a smile on her face as she spun a kunai lazily on her finger. I think you'll only have to wait one more round for it. Oh, and your team will have to win your first fight too. Hearing about his possible rematch made Naruto's ears burn. I'm not the same guy I was back then. You'd better make sure you drag Lee and that angry jerk Neji through the first round kicking and screaming. You'll see. Looking forward to it, Naruto-chan. Tenten said, walking away towards her team and waving over her shoulder. I hope you last longer than 5 minutes this time. Naruto growled at her successful attempt to chide him and his failure to think of a response suitable for the situation when the voice of his teammate Shikamaru snapped him out of it. I really hope you aren't dumb enough to pick a fight with a woman, Naruto. Said young Naragenin stood behind Naruto with his hands sunken into his pockets. That's just nothing but trouble, I'm warning you. Don't worry about me. Naruto said, turning towards Shikamaru as his eyes caught another team over in the distance. Let's worry about them right now. He said, gesturing towards the Iwa team that seemed to be ignoring them to the extent where it was clear to be a blatant mind game attempt. We've got this one right. Meh, depends. On what? On whether it's a team battle or a series of random one-on-ones. Shikamaru said, if we win the toss we're going for the team battle. I don't really see a matchup in our bracket where one-on-ones would really work out for us, at least not yet. Give me some time to think if I'm still conscious or alive after round 1. Naruto nodded, figuring there wasn't much strategizing he could do on people that they didn't know anything about. At that moment, a trio of shinobi walked out onto the field from the entrance tunnel at the edge. One was a bald, dark-skinned Kumo ninja wearing a white-clothed headband, sunglasses, and the normal Kumo ninja uniform. Another was a male Konoha shinobi with brown hair that reached his neck and a senbon in his mouth like a toothpick, wearing the headband in a bandana style on the top of his head and the normal Konoha shinobi outfit. The last one out was a man wearing a turban with the Suna symbol on it. Over a brown body outfit he had a white, sterile-looking cloth set over his shoulders. All right. The Konoha ninja said as he walked up to the mass of genin. Fall into line, it's time to begin. And on command each of the genin got together with their teams and stood in a straight line in front of the 3 older shinobi. I am Shiranui Genma, the Kumo ninja is Jay, the Suna ninja is Sekka. Jay and myself will be your proctors and referees for matches. Sekka is a proctor and a fight doctor. There will be no fighting outside of scheduled matches, understood? Jay spoke up next. I will now give you the rules of the tournament that you should have already received and taken to heart. This is a tournament-style combat exam meant to be carried out over the course of today and tomorrow. Before each round the competing teams will toss a coin. The winner of the toss will get the chance to pick whether the matches will be contested under team elimination rules or one-on-one matches. For the team elimination battles, all members of both competing teams will be on the battlefield at once and will fight until all 3 members of one team are unable to fight any longer. If a member of a team is deemed unable to continue, then they will be immediately evacuated from the field. No attacking an opponent already deemed eliminated, and any attempts by a team member to get back into the battle will be strictly forbidden. Genma spoke again. One-on-one matches will be between 2 representatives from their respective teams, not to be known who will fight who until both move towards the center of the field. No assistance from teammates allowed, or else the fight will end in a disqualification of both the fighting competitor that the interference came from and the competitor that interfered on their behalf. Again, these series will continue until all 3 members of one team are defeated. After one person wins a fight, then and only then can they choose to switch out with a partner or remain in to continue fighting. You have 2 minutes to select which during a conference session between teams. There are no sanctioned pauses or any substitutions whatsoever allowed mid-match. Sekka cleared his throat and addressed the genin. You will obey our commands. If a proctor moves to call a competitor out of the bout, then that's that. Our word is final. We retain the right to stop any fight that we find it necessary to do so to keep the safety of the competitors intact. He looked around at all of the teams and nodded. Having said what he needed to say, good luck to all of you and make your villages proud with your performances. This is your show. Genma said as his voice seemingly projected all over the arena. Look at these people. Everything that's happened here is centered around you. You're the ones that everyone came to see today. So make these people proud, show them that you were given this platform for a reason. As he said that, the filled stands broke into applause and cheering. Jay smiled at some of the more bashful genin not knowing how to receive the attention before his face turned businesslike once more. Now we will show you the tournament setup in case you've forgotten. Day 1. Bracket 1. Match 1, Rock Lee, Hyuga Neji, Tenten vs Samui, Karui, Omoi. Match 2, Narashikamaru, Uzumaki Naruto, Yamanaka Ino vs Hisashi, Misaru, Jun. Match 7, winner of Match 1 vs winner of Match 2, winner heads to semifinals. Bracket 2. Match 3, Fu, Hookie, Doroba vs Aburameshino, Inyazuka Kiba, Hyuga Hinata. Match 4, Uchiha Sasuke, Akimichi Chuji, Harano Sakura vs Kinyuta Doso, Abu Mizuku, Chuchi Kin. Match 8, winner of Match 3 vs winner of Match 4, winner heads to semifinals. Bracket 3. Match 5, Sabaku Nogara, Tamari, Kankuro vs Aburo, Mubi, Kaguri. Match 6, Yakushi Kabuto, Tsurugi Misumi, Akadu Yoroi vs Hojo Arita, Obata Mamako, Geki Dojin. Match 9, winner of Match 5 vs winner of Match 6, winner advances directly to final round. Day 2. Semifinals. Match 10, winner of Match 7 vs winner of Match 8, winner of Bracket 1 vs winner of Bracket 2. Winner heads to final round. The winner of Match 9 will advance to the final round, winner of Bracket 3 will receive a bye out of the semifinals directly to the final round. Finals. Match 11, winner of Match 10 vs winner of Match 9. Damn it. Shikamaru said to himself under his breath, we've really got the block from hell in this stupid thing. Even if we get to the finals, whoever we have to fight then is going to be way fresher than we are. We'll already have to fight once that day and they'll have all of the rest of today and tomorrow until the last fight to rest up. Life ain't fair, kid. Jay said as he managed to hear Shikamaru's low griping, it's how you deal with it that matters today. Now will everyone other than the teams scheduled for the first fight exit the tunnel to the observation balcony. We need Rock Lee, Hyuga Neji, and Tenten of Konoha to come forward to face Samui, Karui, and Omoi of Kumo. An almost unnoticeable twitch came to Neji's eye and a slight tightening of his fists as he and his team did as instructed along with Team Samui. Genma held up a coin to show both teams that it was fair and that he would be flipping it. Team Samui choose, heads or tails. Heads. Omoi said as he popped a sucker into his mouth, but what if we lose this coin toss? Then we'll lose the tournament, stuff like this carries over you know. Shut up Omoi. Karui said, holding her hand over her face in exasperation, now really isn't the time for your overanalyzing bullshit, okay? Just be ready to fight. Genma shrugged and flipped the coin high into the air as everyone on the field watched it. After a moment it landed flat on the sandy ground in the Zen garden and he moved in to observe it. Tails. He ignored Amwa's cry of damn it and looked to Team Guy. Okay you guys, which one do you want? Lee, Neji, and Tenten looked at each other before Neji spoke up. Proctor will take the series of one-on-one matches for the first round. Jay nodded and turned to Team Samui. You heard him, both teams move away and pick your first rep. The rest of you are to stay up in the balcony until the fight is over, at which time you will then be allowed to speak with your teammate on the field if he or she wins their battle. Understanding the rules, Samui nodded as she and her team went off to select who would be fighting first against one of Team Guy. Cool. She said simply and evenly. Not for long I would imagine. Neji replied, intentionally loud enough for her and everyone to hear. Though none of Team Samui turned back around or even said anything to show they cared. Karui did start grinding her teeth at the pretty boy Hyuga kid with the chip on his shoulder at that point though. They didn't know that he was more or less doing the same at the moment. Hey, you're not a genius. Who cares? Read this and you won't suck at Funjutsu, by Jiraiya. Save yourself, I'll hold them back, this isn't a movie though so. Now let's take a break from filling your head with arrays, and making you repeatedly practice making that pesky seal that makes your fingers cramp up. I don't want to be responsible for ending your career because of carpal tunnel after all. The stronger you get you will either develop one of two personality traits. You will either become a bitter manipulator that will have legions of pawns at your disposal and will repeatedly avoid trouble by moving them and using them purely for your own gain and nothing more, or you will become a respected and revered figure that will place the lives of the many above your own. We like to call this a hero complex. There are advantages and disadvantages to both. If you become the first, then you'll have a veritable wall of human meat shields at the ready to cover your ass after you piss off the wrong guy. They will also either believe in you to a fanatical level, or they'll fear you enough to walk into certain death, since what you'll do once they fail will be way worse than just dying. However, you won't exactly be attracting those with admirable personality traits if you go down this route, and surrounding yourself with people like this will mean that your back will always be turned to at least one of them, which is a bad move, because the one you don't have an eye on may think that the world will be better without you and will sink a knife into your spine. For the hero complex, you'll have people that will be loyal to you due to your actions in the past that probably helped them or kept them safe, if you live that long. Those with the vaunted hero complex tend to die young because they would rather solve their own perilous problems and the problems of others instead of letting things slide. They tend to put themselves in danger's way to keep others safe, even though they know that they wouldn't be better off than the other person would have been. The bad thing, though, is that this breeds the dreaded reliable tag that makes people think you can handle anything. Eventually everyone will expect you to be the first to stick your balls in the salad shooter whenever anything especially nasty goes down, and if you don't step up and solve the problem, then people tend to turn on you. Because of this, eventually you'll bite off more than you can chew, and that will be that. Now by proxy, most village leaders have a touch of the hero complex. Why? Because people trusted them enough with their lives to make them the damn village leader in the first place. It's the only way to really get control of a village without staging a hostile takeover. If you do that, then you're probably a manipulator, like a previous paragraph states. It is also the reason why most cage-level ninja die in battle. Don't believe me? Okay, go through the entire list of Kage from every village and tell me that over 65% of the list didn't die in battle instead of peaceful retirement somewhere. And I don't want to hear your bullshit that there's no such thing as retirement for a ninja. I'll be damned if I'm still doing this shit when I'm 75. I've got a career as an author to fall back on, right after I launch my new book idea. It's sure to be gold. But anyway, that's that. You don't really have a third option. Those are the only two ways I've ever seen it work for a powerful shinobi. No one just flies under the radar if you're famous for being good at your damn job, except maybe Hatake Kakashi. I don't know. The kid is still too young at the time of me writing this to give a better opinion. Look to strike a happy medium like myself. I'm a generally good guy, but then again I can be something of a douche, and I generally don't care particularly what my enemies think of me, since I'm either about to beat them up or kill them. But if you tend to lean more towards the dark side, then make sure a lot of your underlings are women, because I've noticed that bad guy kunoichi tend to show more skin than their good guy counterparts. At the very least, you'll always have something good to look at while you're scheming and conniving, and I bet it'll attract a lot more male dumb muscle to be human meat shields to die aimlessly for you and your diabolical cause. And isn't that the most important thing about having a legion of evil? That's it for part 10. Thank you for watching, and see you on the next video.